Chapter 83. The white-robed man couldn't see through Meng Qi's thoughts. He glanced at her indifferently, waved his sleeves slightly, and walked forward. His expression was still indifferent, but he didn't walk fast. Meng Qi lowered her head slightly as she followed behind him. She watched as the hem of his white robe fluttered. His robe swayed gently as if it was a cat's paw that was gently scratching her in appreciation. It was itchy, and she was overwhelmed with ecstasy. Her heart beat faster and faster, but her throat was empty. It was dry and astringent. Even if she opened her mouth repeatedly, she couldn't make a sound. She felt as if time had stopped, but it also seemed to pass very quickly. The white-robed man didn't walk for long before he stopped and turned to look at her. The three formations of chopping sun, chasing moon, and falling star are often called the three talents small killing formation when combined. Yes, Meng Qi answered blankly. She heard him talking, but his voice sounded distant, as if it came from far away. Even if she understood every word, she didn't know what they meant when they were connected. It was as if she didn't understand at all. She looked at his familiar yet somewhat unfamiliar face. They hadn't seen each other for many years. In her previous life, there were always a few months where they saw each other day and night. Logically speaking, she should have already gotten used to his magnificent beauty. However, when she saw him now, she was still a little dazed by his handsome face. She was wrong. She was really wrong. Even if Ji Wujiang healed the wounds on his face, he would still be far inferior to a strand of hair on this person in front of her. Meng Qi believed that among the billions of creatures in the three realms, no one would be more good-looking than him. Especially since he had a noble temperament, kind and gentle temperament. He was the best person in the three realms. The white-robed man glanced at her again, stretched out his finger, and pointed diagonally at the ground. Chi, chi, chi. The three formations of chopping sun were not complicated at all. In a flash, the man set up the three formations, and said indifferently, "The three formations can be used consecutively. Entering one formation can trigger all three formations at the same time." He said, "If you want, Meng Qi." The white-robed man raised his long eyebrows slightly, and his cold gaze fell on Meng Qi's face. "What did I just say?" he asked. "You just now." Meng Qi opened his mouth and subconsciously repeated the words, but his mind was blank. She had no idea what the man had just said. After repeating just now a few times, her face was burning, and even her ears felt like they were on fire. Meng Qi pursed his lips and lowered his head in embarrassment. She had never been so embarrassed in front of this person before. When the other party was teaching, he was so distracted that he didn't even hear what the other party was saying. Meng Qi blushed and looked at the soft grass on the ground, unable to say anything. She didn't notice that a faint smile flashed through the white-robed man's eyes. However, when he spoke again, his voice was even colder than before. "Are you unwilling to learn from me?" "No." Meng Qi raised her head abruptly, her face flushed red. "Of course I'm willing," she explained, but felt that her words were powerless. She lowered her head and said in a low voice, "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been absent-minded. Please don't take offense." The white-robed man's lips curled up slightly. He had seen Meng Qi's calm and collected appearance many times. Her blushing and embarrassed appearance was actually a bit cute. However, he quickly put away his smile and said indifferently, "I won't repeat it a third time." "Yes," Meng Qi hurriedly responded. She raised her eyes. This time, she didn't dare to stare at the other party's face. She was afraid that if she wasn't careful, her mind would start to wander again. Meng Qi focused on the other party's hand. The white-robed man's hand was slender and strong, clean and beautiful. He pointed to the three formations he had just set up and repeated. When the three formations are connected, they form the three talents small killing formation. The sun-slashing sword can summon three sun-slashing swords. The moon-slashing sword uses sharp silver threads to lock down the entire formation. The silver threads are difficult to distinguish, and the slightest carelessness can cut and injure the people in the formation. The Falling Star Association has hidden weapons that cover the sky and cover the earth to kill people who fall into the formation. "Yes." Meng Qi nodded and responded obediently. Her expression became focused and serious. She no longer had the shyness and panic that she couldn't hide earlier. The white-robed man was slightly disappointed. His gaze circled around Meng Qi's serious little face before he slowly retracted it. Then, he pointed to the 3 formations that had already been set up on the ground and asked Meng Qi, "If you want to stack the poison formations, how do you do it?" Meng Qi didn't dare to step forward. She could only stand where she was and carefully observe the 3 formations. To stack the effects of the formations, it wasn't as simple as drawing them together. The first condition was that the stacked formations had to be able to connect with the existing formations. In other words, there had to be at least 2 lines in the 2 formations that could run through the 2 formations. Meng Qi muttered to herself for a moment. She was slightly far away. At this time, she could only lean slightly and look at the ground. "Come here." The white-robed man waved at her, indicating for her to stand next to him. "Yes." Meng Qi was stunned. She obediently took 2 steps forward. This time, she could see more clearly. The 3 formations on the ground seemed to have come to life. Although she was distracted just now, Meng Qi still outlined the process of the man drawing the 3 formations in her mind. Her gaze finally fell on the man's hands. Now that she was closer, Meng Qi could even see the man's neatly trimmed fingernails. There wasn't a single prominent knuckle on his slender fingers. They looked like the most perfect collection in the world. There wasn't a single flaw to be found. Meng Qi suddenly shook her head hard and secretly glanced at the man. She was distracted again. She quickly lowered her head. However, she didn't know that her reddened earlobes had completely betrayed her thoughts. The white-robed man's lips curled up slightly. When he spoke again, his voice had become warmer. "Have you thought of it?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. "Come." The man stepped aside. Although the ground was soft soil, Meng Qi still couldn't copy him and draw formations easily with her fingers like a knife. She took out her small medicine knife and pointed diagonally to the ground. The medicine knife quickly drew across the ground. A small formation quickly appeared between the 3 formations. Meng Qi had already thought about it. She didn't hesitate to act. The newly laid formation had 3 lines running through it, connecting it to the other 3 formations. In addition, the 3 lines crisscrossed and connected to the formation next to them. She drew the last stroke and put away her medicine knife. A smile appeared on her face. "Smoke formation," she said. "Poison can be placed in the center of the formation. It can be activated to attack and defend." As Meng Qi spoke, she subconsciously turned to look at the white-robed man. She forgot that she had taken a few steps forward to lay the formation. At this moment, she was standing beside the man. While she was drawing the smoke formation, the man silently walked to her side. Meng Qi turned around and smelled a cool fragrance. It was slightly bitter, like the fragrance of the trees in the forest after the autumn and winter rain. However, it smelled very good. Meng Qi hurriedly took 2 or 3 steps back and put some distance between the 2 of them. She was now much calmer than before. Although her heart was still beating very fast, she was full of joy. However, she was no longer in a trance like before. She couldn't think at all. "Brother, I'm sorry for offending you." Meng Qi lowered her eyes and saluted the man. She wanted to call herself a disciple. But then she remembered that the man still hadn't agreed to let her become his disciple. She quickly changed the way she addressed him. The man was like the moon in her heart. Whatever he said was right. Meng Qi had never doubted or been dissatisfied with him. The white-robed man glanced at Meng Qi. His eyelids drooped slightly, hiding the glimmer in his eyes. "Senior, please enlighten me." Meng Qi bowed again. This time, she didn't even dare to look at the other party. She looked at the ground and slowly came back to her senses. This didn't seem to be the floating island of the outland. The grass on the ground she was stepping on was soft and lush. The cold pond on the side was also very wide. Meng Qi looked at it from the corner of her eyes. She couldn't see the other side of the cold pond at a glance. The cloud waterfall fell from the high mountain. The green mountain towered, connecting with the surrounding mountain peaks. Above the mountain range, the sea of clouds was majestic. It only turned into a cloud waterfall pouring down here. In short, the place where Meng Qi was now was far more magnificent than the cloud waterfall on the floating island of the outland that she had seen once in a drunken dream. Although the scenery on the floating island of the outland was extremely beautiful, It wasn't as magnificent as this. Meng Qi's palms that were hanging by her side slowly opened, and then slowly clenched. She subconsciously pursed her lips. So this wasn't the Outland? Or this was the Outland, a place that she had never set foot in? Also, she was clearly in the enchantment of the apricot forest, but the man could use the jade slip of the Outland to bring her here. Who was he? Countless thoughts flashed through Meng Qi's mind. However, in the end, she let them extinguish one by one. If he didn't say, she wouldn't ask, think, or doubt. Meng Qi gently closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her gaze became firm and clear again. She would believe whatever he said. These thoughts flashed through her mind quickly, but in fact, it only took a moment. Don't call me senior, the white-robed man said. My name is Yin Qingyan. Meng Qi, since there's no need to be apprenticed, you can call me by my name. 2KXS. Qingyan. Meng Qi murmured and repeated these two words. She raised her head and looked at the other party in a daze. The white-robed man's black hair was as black as ink, and his expression was indifferent. He stood tall and looked into Meng Qi's eyes. Yes. Meng Qi responded in a low voice. Yin Qingyan took a step forward and raised his sleeves. A gust of wind blew from below and blew up his robe. Be careful, he said, clenched his hand into a fist, and gently pushed Meng Qi's back. The wide sleeves of his white robe drooped down and covered his hand. Yin Qingyan protected Meng Qi through his robe and retreated backward. Meng Qi only saw a bright light in front of his eyes. When the two of them set up the formation just now, it was just a drawing. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to be activated. However, Yin Qingyan used an unknown method. Meng Qi only saw light and shadow in front of his eyes. A long saber with a cold light jumped out of the air and slashed at the center of the formation. Then a silvery thread shuttled out of the array. The silvery threads looked very thin and would be overlooked if one didn't pay attention. However, Meng Qi knew that if he accidentally walked through the silvery threads, he would be left with countless wounds by the disorderly silvery threads. Before the silvery threads faded, countless hidden weapons fell from the sky and enveloped the entire formation. Meng Qi slowly exhaled and looked at the fierce attack in front of him. Yin Qingyan flicked his sleeves, and the last formation, the smoke-gathering formation, was activated. Those weapons were instantly stained with a faint green color. Meng Qi didn't put poison in the eye of the formation, and not all poisons were green. She knew that Yin Qingyan just wanted to let her see it clearly. She slowly exhaled and looked at the light of the formation in front of her. This kind of earth-shattering attack was actually formed by 3 small arrays superimposed on a not-so-powerful smoke-gathering array. The study of spirit designs was indeed vast and profound. It was also extremely powerful. Meng Qi subconsciously thought of what Ji Wujiong had said earlier. He said that in ancient times, powerful formation cultivators could fight against many people alone. They could sit in the formation alone and defeat Dharma cultivators, and sword cultivators of similar cultivation levels. It seemed that if one really became a great formation cultivator, they could indeed have such power. For example, Meng Qi turned to look at Yin Qingyan. He was sure that Yin Qingyan had the ability to do so. Do you remember the positions of the 3 formations just now? Yin Qingyan asked again. His voice was clear and cold as if it had been soaked in the first snow. Meng Qi nodded. Only then did she realize that the two of them were standing side by side again. Yin Qingyan was right beside her. When he flicked his sleeves, his long robe almost brushed against her cheek. Meng Qi hurriedly took 2 steps back respectfully. Although Yin Qingyan didn't allow her to become his disciple, in her heart, he was already her only master. He was a powerhouse that she would respect for the rest of her life. He was also the person who treated her the best and the most gentle in her life. I remember, Meng Qi said. She couldn't wait to take out her notebook and memorize everything Yin Qingyan said, and did to show that she was serious. But she also knew that it would be rude to do so. Yin Qingyan nodded. Go ahead. Yes. Meng Qi felt a wave of disappointment, and looked at Yin Qingyan reluctantly. She didn't know how long it would be before she could see him again. But Yin Qingyan was willing to show up and teach her. Even if it was only for a short time. She was satisfied and didn't dare to ask for anything more. What's wrong? Yin Qingyan turned around and saw Meng Qi's reluctant gaze. His lips curled up slightly, and his mood improved a little. Even his voice became gentler. Do you have any other questions? He asked patiently. No. Meng Qi shook her head and instantly regretted it. Then go. Yin Qingyan flicked his sleeves. Meng Qi didn't move, but her body flew backward involuntarily. The white-robed man was getting farther and farther away from her, and he was becoming more and more blurry. She knew that she was about to leave and didn't know when she would see him again. Then Ji Wujiang. Just as she was about to leave, Yin Qingyan's voice suddenly sounded clearly in her ears. Don't listen. Yes. Meng Qi immediately agreed. Even if he didn't say it, she wouldn't listen. She definitely wouldn't acknowledge Ji Wujiang as her master. Meng Qi was only stunned for a moment. Then, she saw the scenery around her change, and she stood in the room of the inn again. She lowered her head and looked at the outer sky jade scroll in her palm, which was already warm from holding it. Meng Qi subconsciously reached out and touched her cheek. Was she dreaming just now? Yin. Qing. Yen, but if she was dreaming, she shouldn't have dreamt of his name, and it was so clear. Meng Qi lowered her head slightly and looked at the outer sky jade scroll in her palm. And the method to set up the array. She definitely couldn't think of it just by dreaming. She pinched her own cheeks hard. Ah, Meng Qi whispered softly. It hurt. It seemed that she wasn't dreaming. She immediately became happy and quickly jumped off the bed. The feeling of standing on solid ground was incomparably real. Meng Qi was so happy that her chest almost burst. She quickly walked to the door of the room and pulled it open. Humph. As soon as the door opened, Ji Wujiang's cold snort sounded. The black-robed man stood at the courtyard wall outside the door in boredom, leaning against the wall as he stood. There was a big tree above his head, and the sunlight shone through the leaves and scattered on his face. It also made the 3 black scars on Ji Wujiang's face more obvious. Ji Wujiang looked a little strange and terrifying in this state. Meng Qi glanced at him with a smile, and only felt that even he looked much more pleasing to the eye. What are you laughing at? Ji Wujiang snorted again. Have you thought of how to use those 3 arrays? What are you secretly doing behind closed doors? Don't you know that we don't have much time left? Yes. Meng Qi nodded with a smile. At this time, even if Ji Wujiang was still full of sarcasm and ridicule, she didn't feel that it was harsh at all. So we'll go find the mayor immediately, Meng Qi said and quickly walked out of the inn. I've already thought of what to do. So just now, Ji Wujiang looked at the unconcealable joy on her body. What happened? Nothing. Meng Qi shook her head. You're lying to my face. Ji Wujiang snorted again, but he also knew that this stubborn little girl wouldn't say anything if she didn't want to tell him something. He caught up with Meng Qi and looked at her as if she was a happy little oriole, and even her footsteps became lighter. Her face, which was usually expressionless, was full of smiles, and she looked lively and beautiful. Ji Wujiang was familiar with Meng Qi's senior sister, Lu Qingran, and knew that she was a rare beauty even in the 3,000 worlds where there were countless beauties. He didn't think that Meng Qi was very good-looking before. He didn't expect her to be so elegant when she was happy, and she didn't seem to lose out to Lu Qingran. Mayor. In just a moment, the two of them found the mayor of Stormy Town next to the inn. The mayor's worried face had already relaxed, as if even if only 2 reinforcements came, he was still confident that these 2 people could protect Stormy Town. We've decided to ambush the Soaring Snake sect halfway. Meng Qi didn't hesitate and directly stated her intentions. Oh, the mayor's expression finally changed. He turned his head to look at Meng Qi, and his eyes were full of surprise. Ambush? Yes. Meng Qi nodded and said with certainty. Instead of waiting for death, it's better to think of a way to fight back. We're going to ambush the Soaring Snake sect outside Stormy Town, so that the safety of the town's ordinary residents can be guaranteed to the greatest extent, she said. Otherwise, with just the 2 of us, we won't be able to take care of everything. After Meng Qi finished speaking, she looked with burning eyes at the mayor. She didn't dare to miss any expression on the other's face. This was a test of the great competition. She wasn't sure if the other would agree to the method she thought of. This was the Xinglin Holy Land, a test for medical xiao. Fellow's words are reasonable. Unexpectedly, the mayor only thought for a moment and then nodded. Instead of waiting for death, it's better to fight back. But, he asked Meng Qi, do you need me to do anything for you? We need help. Meng Qi turned and exchanged a look with Ji Wujiang. She said, he and I will go ahead of time to prepare and ambush the Soaring Snake sect. Please gather all Xiuzha above Jindan in town, and leave a quarter to guard Stormy Town. The rest will meet us 30 li away as soon as possible. All right. The mayor nodded. He thought and then suddenly handed a small pouch to Meng Qi. Since the two of you are preparing to ambush the Soaring Snake sect, you must be able to use this. This is... Meng Qi lowered her head and sent a bit of Ling energy into the pouch. Her expression suddenly became strange as she looked in shock at the mayor. What's inside? Ji Wujiang asked curiously. 7 object powder. Meng Qi suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There was a large box of 7 object powder in the pouch. That was the poison they had encountered in the last test. The two of them had spent a lot of effort to get rid of the poison of the 7 object powder. They hadn't thought that they would get this from the mayor of Stormy Town who needed their protection here. Ha 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 ha. As though he guessed Meng Qi's thoughts, the mayor smiled freely and said faintly, there are countless ling grasses and herbs in the world. What is a poisonous grass? What is a medicinal grass? Meng Qi stilled. To save people is a medicinal grass, but to hurt people is a poisonous grass. As the mayor spoke, he walked forward. I will follow fellow Taoists' instructions, and let the cultivators meet up with the two of you. The two of you, please go and do your work. The lives of all the residents of Stormy Town are in your hands. Please do your best to protect everyone. Meng Qi held the pouch and looked thoughtfully at the mayor's back as he walked away. She suddenly seemed to understand the meaning of the existence of this barrier. The ancient almighty seniors did not leave behind this holy land and this trial boundary just to give their juniors some elixirs or elixir formulas. They were teaching the true principles of medical cultivation. Meng Qi exhaled and threw the pouch into her storage pouch. Let's go, she said and started to walk out of the town. They still couldn't use flying treasures here. As cultivators, Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang weren't slow. They quickly left the west gate and headed in the direction of the Soaring Snake sect, arriving at a place about 30 miles away from Stormy Town. This place? Meng Qi looked in front of her. It seems very suitable for an ambush. The outside of Stormy Town was originally a flat plain, empty and flat. But the place where Meng Qi and the others were now was an undulating mountain range. Those green mountains were extremely tall, and there was only a wide road in the middle. But compared to the flat plain before, this was a very suitable place to set up a formation and carry out an ambush. It seems like it was specially prepared for us. Meng Qi muttered and took out the materials she had prepared to set up the formation from her storage pouch. Ji Wujiang didn't make a move. He stood to the side with cold eyes and made up his mind to see what Meng Qi was going to do. He wanted to see if she really had an idea, or if she couldn't handle it, and asked him for help in the end. The green-robed girl had a slender figure. She didn't even look at Ji Wujiang and started to move nimbly. Ji Wujiang looked at her for a moment. Suddenly, he raised his eyebrows slightly and his eyes flickered. All right, he had decided. When he got out of this damn enchantment, he would immediately tie up Meng Qi and force her to acknowledge him as her master. He wouldn't even delay for an incense stick to burn. Chapter 84. Bright light vine, smoke wave sand, geomagpie feather. These things were all formation materials that could be obtained in large quantities from the general store in Wind Rain Town. Meng Qi had a lot of them in her storage bag. These materials were not valuable. Even in the 3,000 worlds, one could buy a lot of them from the Cloud Immortal Pavilion, or the general stores in the major cities, by spending some spirit stones. From the moment Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang met the mayor and decided to ambush the Soaring Snake sect midway to intercept and kill them, they ran all over the town to prepare materials, learn new formations, make a plan, and find the mayor. It took them more than 2 hours to arrive at this place 15 kilometers away from Wind Rain Town. They still had a little more than 4 hours left. Meng Qi's movements were very neat. Even though she knew that there would be a fierce battle, she still had a faint smile on her face. The tip of her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes were like a spring breeze. Her eyes were full of ripples and light flowed in them. Ji Wujiang saw that she was setting up formations. Otherwise, he might have thought that she was setting up a place to meet her lover. He clicked his tongue. He also knew that it was useless to force Meng Qi to tell him something that she did not want to tell him. His gaze landed on the small formation that had already been set up on the ground. Meng Qi's movements were extremely neat. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 3 groups of tripartite small killing formations had already ambushed on the only main road in the valley. She hummed an unknown tune. Amidst the cheerful tune, the materials for the formation poured out from her slender fingers one after another. Ji Wujiang looked at her familiar movements. Who would have thought that she had learned these formations more than 2 hours ago? Give me the materials. Ji Wujiang looked for a moment, then slowly walked to Meng Qi's side and reached out to her. Meng Qi was startled, but still gave him a portion of the formation materials in her storage bag. Ji Wujiang looked at the surrounding green mountains that towered into the clouds. The mountains were majestic and steep, piercing straight into the clouds. Even cultivators would not climb over the peak of the mountains. His gaze swept across the mountain walls on both sides. His body spread out, and he leaped onto the mountain walls like a bird. Ji Wujiang had the intention to show off his skills in front of Meng Qi. He tapped lightly on the mountain wall with the tip of his foot, and spread out his body. Like a bird, he flitted across the steep mountain wall. His hands did not stop moving, and the materials were thrown out like flowing water. From time to time, fluorescent lights would light up on the mountain wall. Ji Wujiang's fingers were like knives, and sharp spiritual energy directly pierced into the mountain wall, sending the materials in along with it. He felt a little proud in his heart. He turned around and stood on a protruding rock on the mountain wall, and then turned his head to look at Meng Qi. The green-robed girl was still like a hard-working ant, diligently working on the ground. She didn't even bother to look at him. Ji Wujiang. Meng Qi, he called out. Meng Qi looked up at Ji Wujiang. On the precipitous mountain wall, the black-robed youth stood against the wind. The wind blew through the valley, and their robes fluttered in the wind. Ji Wujiang's hair was slightly messy, and a few strands brushed past his perfect left cheek. What's wrong? Meng Qi's gaze swept across his face, and then landed on the mountain wall without any reluctance. Her eyes lit up as she looked at the formation on the mountain wall. Amazing! Meng Qi raised his chin slightly and praised from the bottom of his heart. Heh! Ji Wujiang chuckled and asked as if he didn't care. How many do you need? He had left 100 ghosts and charming formation on the mountain wall. The more the better, Meng Qi said casually, and then lowered his head to continue working. About 6 hours later, the last bit of material in Meng Qi's hand fell to the ground. A faint light flashed, and it quickly sank into the soil and disappeared. She took a few steps back, almost standing outside the passage between the 2 mountains, and looked at the endless formation in front of her. That's right. It was a formation group. In the middle of countless 3 small killing formations, the smoke-gathering formation was stacked layer by layer, almost stretching from the entrance of the valley to more than a mile ahead. On both sides of the mountain wall, the 100 ghosts and charming formation was crisscrossing forward. Ji Wujiang nimbly swept over and landed beside Meng Qi, looking forward with her side by side. He had almost never fought side by side with someone like this, and there was an indescribable feeling. He glanced sideways at the girl standing beside him. Her cheeks were crimson, and there were fine beads of sweat on her forehead. A few strands of hair stuck to her cheeks, and it actually made Ji Wujiang feel more and more pleasing to the eye. Meng Qi was in a good mood, and when she felt Ji Wujiang's gaze, she turned and smiled at him. She took out the medicinal herbs she found from the pharmacy from her storage bag, and took them out together with the small bronze cauldron. She threw the medicinal herbs she needed into the small cauldron, and her fingers quickly drew the changes of the great fire formation on the ground. Although he had already seen it once, Ji Wujiang's eyebrows still twitched slightly every time he saw Meng Qi use the great fire formation to refine medicine. Puff, puff. In just a moment, white smoke came out of the medicinal cauldron. Soon, Meng Qi put the refined medicine into a porcelain bottle, and threw in a pile of medicinal herbs. What's this? This time, even though Ji Wujiang was considered an expert in using poisons, he couldn't see what Meng Qi was refining. When I was trying out pill recipes before, I missed a medicinal herb. The refined medicine doesn't have any medicinal effect, but when it breaks, it will burst out a large amount of white smoke, making people unable to see clearly. I added 2 more medicinal herbs, and it will also make people's eyes stinging when they are in the white smoke, and they will keep crying. Mengqi paused and said, I think it's quite interesting, so I named it Little Smoke Pill. As she spoke, she pursed her lips and chuckled, and 2 shallow dimples appeared at the corners of her lips. As Mengqi spoke, she took out the refined medicine again, and threw in the 3rd batch of medicinal herbs. Ah! She suddenly exclaimed softly. What's wrong? Ji Wujiang asked. My medical skills have reached the peak of the 3rd stage. Mengqi tilted her head slightly and said. Ji Wujiang. He had already discovered that ever since he said that he would let Mengqi acknowledge him as her master, the girl's hostility towards him suddenly faded a lot. However, he suddenly felt that he should be flustered. This girl clearly had a true love for medicine. Moreover, she was only at the 5th stage of the foundation establishment realm, right? Her medical skills had already reached the peak of the 3rd stage. Her talent in medicine didn't seem to be any lower than her talent in formations. Ji Wujiang took a deep breath. In the flames of the Great Fire Formation, the bitter medicinal fragrance once again rose in spirals. Mengqi put away the newly refined medicine, stood up, and flicked her finger. Hiss hiss. The sound of the air breaking sounded. Those Dan medicines flew steadily towards the formation in front of them, and landed in the eye of the formation at the center of the 3-talent little killing formation. Her figure spread out, a large handful of ling stones in her hand, and she quickly flew over the formation they had set up. 15 minutes later, Mengqi returned from the mountain valley. She lightly landed next to Ji Wujiang, a smile blooming on her face. Done. Just as Mengqi's voice landed, a flurry of hurried footsteps came from behind them. She turned around and saw about 60 to 70 Xiuzhe hurrying towards them under the lead of the mayor of Wind Rain Town. Fellow Taoists. The mayor stopped in front of them, and turned around to point at the Xiuzhe behind him. He introduced, There are 72 Xiuzhe here, 17 of them are Yuanying, the rest are Jindan. Other than leaving behind some to guard Wind Rain Town, I have brought all of them here. Many thanks, Mayor. Mengqi raised her hands in a bow to him. I'll leave this place to you too. I'm going back to Wind Rain Town to arrange for guards. The mayor nodded at Mengqi, and then turned and hurried back the way they had come. Mengqi's gaze swept across the Xiuzhe. 17 Yuanying, and more than 50 Jindan. The situation was better than she had imagined. These 70 Xiuzhe were almost all sword xiu and spell xiu. There were men and women old and young. Mengqi coughed lightly, and turned to look at Ji Wujiang. What are you looking at me for? Ji Wujiang said, You arrange it. He was more knowledgeable than Mengqi, and had already guessed the meaning of setting up the boundary of the Xinglin Holy Land tournament. Mengqi was a medical xiu, and he was not. Even though he wanted to pull the little girl into the formation xiu camp, and inherit the legacy of his sect. But he did not need to argue with Mengqi on this matter. All right. Mengqi nodded. Please divide into 2 groups. One group will go to the back of the formation we left behind, and lie in ambush on the cliff. Wait for the Soaring Snake sect to enter the formation, and then block them from behind. The other group, please stay where you are, and prepare to kill the members of the Soaring Snake sect that charge out. Ji Wujiang. This arrangement was really simple. Mengqi had not thought to make it so complicated. This was the boundary of the medical xiu. The test of the medical xiu would not be focused on killing. Those Xiuzhe were very obedient, and quickly divided into 2 groups. Even the sword xiu and spell xiu were grouped together, and then they waited for Mengqi's next orders. You. Mengqi pointed at the group on the left. Go to the back of the mountain valley. Ji Wujiang raised a finger, and a thin line of Ling energy flashed out. It drew a safe path for people to pass through the formation that the 2 had worked on for an entire afternoon. There were 9 Yuanying Xiuzhe in the group that Mengqi pointed out. 5 swords and 4 spells. Those 4 spell xiu were especially skilled in large-scale offensive spells. Under the lead of these 9 people, there were also some Jindan Xiuzhe following behind them. They followed the path that Ji Wujiang pointed out, and quickly passed through the mountain valley to find a place to ambush. You will stay here, Meng Qi said to the remaining Xiuzha. There were 8 Yuanying Xiuzha left, and 5 sword Xiu. Supposedly, they came from the same sect, and could form a sword formation. They were very powerful in both offense and defense. These Xiuzha spread out to the 2 sides of the Green Mountain, and hid their tracks. Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang also hid at the entrance of the mountain valley. They had already discussed briefly. When the disciples of the Soaring Snake sect activated the formation, the Xiuzha lying in ambush on the other side of the mountain valley would immediately act, and force them into the dense formation. Meng Qi leaned against the mountain wall. There seemed to be the sun rising and the moon setting inside the barrier. After a busy day, night had completely covered the earth. Occasionally, a bit of starlight could be seen in the sky. Under the sky, the surrounding green mountains appeared especially solemn. She looked up at the sky. What flashed through her mind was the scene of Yin Qingyan seriously teaching her formations. She actually saw him again so soon. It really was unbelievable. Meng Qi's hand that was hanging by her side clenched tightly. She gripped the handle of the small silver medicine knife tightly in her hand. Meng Qi, Ji Wujiang suddenly said in a low voice. Later, you can take a look at the sword formation of those 5 sword Xiu. He paused and then said, most of the sword formations circulating in the 3,000 worlds were born from ancient formations. However, they have only learned a little, and have not been able to use the essence of formations at all. It is just a simple posture, and it can only scare Xiuzha who do not understand formations. Ji Wujiang's tone was as harsh as usual. Meng Qi was already used to his way of speaking. She also knew that since the other party had specifically pointed it out for her to see the sword formation, there must be something good about it. She was about to nod to show that she understood. Suddenly Yin Qingyan's voice sounded in Meng Qi's mind. The sword formation is indeed very simple. If you want to learn, I will teach you. Just as he finished speaking, he coughed lightly a few times. Yes. Meng Qi was very worried about his body. When a Xiuzha cultivated to a certain level, they rarely got sick. For someone like Yin Qingyan, whose voice was weak and who coughed from time to time, it was not as simple as an ordinary injury. He might have injured his great Tao foundation, or his spiritual ocean. Are you all right? Meng Qi could not help but ask in her mind. I'm fine. Although Yin Qingyan said that, he still coughed lightly. It's fine. Focus on the ambush. He paused and said lightly. Don't be distracted chatting. Yes. Meng Qi responded respectfully again. She hurriedly focused her mind. They were facing a great enemy, and the other party had a powerhouse in the spirit-severing stage. They were outnumbered. She really shouldn't be distracted. Master. No. Senior Yin Qingyan was right. What were you thinking about just now? Did you hear what I said? Ji Wujiang's voice sounded again. Don't talk. Meng Qi said in a low voice. They should be here soon. Listen. Her expression suddenly tensed up. Ji Wujiang also shut his mouth, and his expression became serious. His eyes dimmed slightly, and he looked towards the front of the valley. They're here. Ji Wujiang's voice was slightly hoarse, and he reached out to support himself on the mountain wall beside him. They brought poisonous insects, he said again. There are quite a lot of them. Yes. Meng Qi nodded. She had already considered this point, so she had left a lot of thousand crane formations on both sides of the 3 talents small killing formation. Goshawks were strong and sharp, and they soared in the sky. They were the biggest nemesis of poisonous insects and snakes. Moreover, she had seen the goshawks summoned by the 1,000 crane formation deal with Ji Wujiang's ghostly shadows neatly. She believed that they would not be afraid of those poisonous insects and snakes. Ji Wujiang raised his hand, and said to the sword Xiu and Dharma Xiu behind him, be on guard. Those cultivators immediately started to move silently. Meng Qi did not hear any sound, but she could feel that there seemed to be a sharp chill in the air. She looked back slightly, and saw that the sword Xiu's long swords were already floating beside them. Cold light flashed in the night, and they looked exceptionally sharp. Most of the Dharma Xiu had life-bond talismans beside them. The life-bond talismans of the 3 Yuanying Dharma Xiu had already been completely refined. They floated around them, emitting a faint fluorescent light. They had already formed hand seals. They were just waiting for the enemy to appear. And the hand seals would cover the sky and earth as they attacked forward. Meng-Chi held her breath, and even she tightened her grip on the silver medicine knife in her hand. Even though she did not cultivate the silver moon sword diagram to Ji Wujiang's standards, it was a pretty good offensive spell. Don't leave behind me. Ji Wujiang happened to turn his head, and ordered Meng-Chi in a low voice. His long robe suddenly moved without any wind. A small and exquisite amethyst 8 trigrams disc flashed out of the darkness, and hung by his face. Formation Xiao. At this time, Ji Wujiang did not forget to prove to Meng-Chi that Formation Xiao were very strong. Even in battle, they will not lose to Sword Xiao and Dharma Xiao. A strange light flashed through his dark blue eyes. Meng-Chi looked carefully. After Ji Wujiang finished speaking, he suddenly thought of something. He turned and reached out a hand to Meng-Chi. Give me some ling stones. Meng-Chi. Nothing could be seen from Ji Wujiang's injured side of his face. But at this time, the amethyst 8 trigrams disc was floating beside his face, and a faint fluorescent light shone on the other side of his face. He met Meng-Chi's surprised gaze, and a dark red color seemed to flash across his face. Ji Wujiang gritted his teeth, and was a little angry from embarrassment. I'll pay you back 100 times after we get out of here. No need. Meng-Chi's lips curled up slightly. This was the barrier of the Xinglin sacred ground. If she could pass the test, she would still be the one benefiting. She was still clear about this kind of thing. She took out a handful of 8th grade ling stones and handed them to Ji Wujiang, and a few 9th grade ling stones. You're so rich. Ji Wujiang looked at the 9th grade and 8th grade ling stones in his hand in disbelief. Then back then you. As he spoke, he suddenly shut his mouth. Huh. Meng-Chi was confused. Back then what? It's nothing. Ji Wujiang put away the ling stones. What he wanted to say was that since Meng-Chi was so rich, she actually had the Cultivator Alliance step in and force Lu Qingran to pay back the money for a few 9th grade ling stones. Even he was in a difficult situation. And he actually didn't see that Meng-Chi, a foundation-building cultivator, was so rich. She was doing much better than he was. Medical cultivation. Meng-Chi guessed Ji Wujiang's thoughts and said half-jokingly, it's very rich. It's not too late to change to medical cultivation. Ji Wujiang snorted coldly. His fingers shook slightly, and the pitch-black narrow blade appeared in his hand again. He turned around proudly, and his gaze seemed to pass through the valley to look at the unknown enemies in front of him. Formation cultivators have true unparalleled combat power. Heh! In the valley the rustling sound became clearer and clearer. However, in the dark night it was still silent. Then, light suddenly lit up in front of the valley. They're making a move. Meng-Chi jumped up and quickly walked over to the valley. Ji Wujiang hurriedly followed. Sure enough, they saw that after the light flashed in front of them, the light of spells blotted out the sky and covered the earth, and a rumbling sound suddenly sounded. Then there was the sound of long swords piercing through the air, and there was a whooshing sound. Chaotic shouts and screams could be heard. They were a little far away, so Meng-Chi couldn't hear what they were saying. Just as the commotion was getting more and more chaotic, a cold voice suddenly rang out. That's all there is to it. You guys continue forward. That voice was obviously very cold and not loud, but it clearly reached Meng-Chi and Ji Wujiang's ears. It sounded very uncomfortable, like a poisonous snake crawling over one's back, causing goosebumps to rise all over one's body. Meng-Chi and Ji Wujiang looked at each other again. The person who spoke should be the spirit-severing cultivator of the Soaring Snake Sect, the sect master of the Soaring Snake Sect, the one who threatened to slaughter the entire Wind Rain town, and also their most troublesome enemy this time. As soon as the sect master of the Soaring Snake Sect finished speaking, the chaotic shouts suddenly disappeared. Hurried footsteps sounded, and about 100 people rushed toward Meng-Chi and the others. The light of the spell formation lit up. Immediately, someone screamed a warning. There's an ambush. There's also an ambush in front. Shut up. The sect master of the Soaring Snake Sect's cold voice sounded again. It's just a small spell formation. Its power is limited. Charge forward, and those who turn back will be killed. Meng-Chi took a deep breath, and the hands hanging by his sides clenched nervously. If the sun-slashing formation, moon-chasing formation, and falling star formation were used separately, it would indeed be easy for people to think that they were not very powerful. She was at the outermost area, so the spell formations she set up were much more sparse, and she didn't use the 3 talents minor killing formation. It was for this moment. She wanted these people to think that the spell formations were not that powerful, so they could charge forward unscrupulously. There's one here too. Me too. Ha. It really doesn't seem that powerful. I easily avoided it. Mine is also very weak, it can't hurt anyone. I thought that Windrain Town would have some tricks up their sleeves, but it turns out that it's just this. Is this a deathbed struggle? Ha 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 ha. Amidst the wild laughter, the disciples of the Soaring Snake sect became more and more relaxed. Finally, almost all of the disciples entered the area where the spell formations were more concentrated. Mengqi already had a handful of 5th-grade spirit stones in her hand, and she flicked them out with a wave of her hand. With a soft poof, a group of 3 talents minor killing formations were all activated. Ha! This seems a little… The Soaring Snake sect disciple was a Golden Core Realm disciple, and he suddenly screamed miserably. This long scream was like a switch. Poof 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 poof. The sounds were endless. When Mengqi set up the spell formations, she had considered this point. The 3 talents minor killing formations were linked together, and more than 3 formations were linked together. There were also times when the stacked formations of the 3 talents minor killing formations were linked together. It was truly a case of pulling one hair and affecting the whole body. In the blink of an eye, the entire valley had become filled with the light of swords and sabers. Countless long sabers that flickered with cold light, green light, and pitch-black light slashed towards the waists of the Soaring Snake sect disciples. Silver threads suddenly crisscrossed, enveloping almost all of the Soaring Snake sect disciples. Black concealed weapons dipped in poison fell from the sky, covering almost all of the disciples. That was not all. From time to time, white smoke would rise into the air, blurring the vision of the people in the surroundings. Not only could they not see anything, the white smoke that entered their eyes was also particularly spicy, so much so that they could not even open their eyes. The Soaring Snake sect disciples who had just relaxed suddenly tensed up again. However, the white smoke filled the air. The silver threads were slanting in the air. The long sabers were flashing with cold light, and the concealed weapons were covering the sky and the earth. If they were not careful, several wounds would be left on their bodies. Ambush! A Soaring Snake sect disciple screamed a warning. Rustle, 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 rustle. The sound suddenly became louder. Mengqi focused her gaze in front of her, and suddenly felt a little nauseous. Behind the Soaring Snake sect disciples, the entire ground seemed to have turned into a floor mat that was constantly moving. Countless venomous snakes twisted their slender bodies and slithered towards the exit of the valley. Above the venomous snakes, there was a black cloud formed by venomous insects. The sound of their wings flapping could be heard unceasingly, and they were also flying towards them. It's my turn. A bloodthirsty glint flashed in Ji Wujiang's eyes. He lightly flicked his finger, and a handful of 8th-stage spirit stones flew towards the mountain wall. Boom! A light sound was heard, and the mountain walls on both sides of the valley shone brightly. The 2,400 ghosts and charming formations that he had left behind were all activated. Countless ghostly figures emerged from the mountain walls while giggling, and quickly ran towards the Soaring Snake sect disciples in the valley. They did not even need to injure the disciples. They only needed to obstruct them for a moment, and the Soaring Snake sect disciples would be injured by the long sabers, silver threads, and the concealed weapons that covered the sky. There were also some ghostly figures that rushed towards the venomous snakes and insects. As they giggled, they grabbed the venomous snakes and tore them in half. How many formations did you actually set up? Even Ji Wujiang was a little speechless when he saw this. The formations on the ground lit up unceasingly as they were activated one after another, and he faintly felt his hair stand on end. Mengqi said, "In any case, the materials are all used up." As she spoke, she threw out another handful of spirit stones. The 1,000 crane formation was instantly activated, and countless dark blue goshawks soared into the sky from both sides. Compared to the ghostly figures, the goshawks' movements were even faster. They swooped down from the sky, and with a swipe of their claws, 5 or 6 venomous snakes would be torn in half. Ji Wujiang slowly exhaled. When Meng Qi became ruthless, she was actually quite ruthless. This was even more in line with her temperament. In an instant, the valley seemed to have turned into hell. The Soaring Snake sect disciples were caught off guard by this wave of attacks from the formations, and they were in a complete mess. Ah! As the leader screamed, a golden core disciple of the Soaring Snake sect with a lower cultivation level collapsed. Immediately after, the second, the third, the nascent soul elders might still be able to hold on for a while, but at least half of the golden core disciples were unable to withstand the inescapable net that Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang had set up together. Renwina. Net Meng Qi watched as more and more Soaring Snake sect disciples collapsed. Be careful. Ji Wujiang suddenly reached out and grabbed her arm, and abruptly retreated with her in tow. With a loud boom, a ball of spell light and shadow exploded where Meng Qi and the others were standing just a moment ago. A nascent soul elder of the Soaring Snake sect, whose robes were stained with blood and whose cheeks were covered in fine scars, finally broke free from the densest area of the formations, and rushed to the entrance of the valley. He wore a black robe and coldly stared at Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang. Who are you, little brats? How dare you obstruct my Soaring Snake sect's business? Meng Qi didn't show any courtesy at all, and waved her hand. With a long swish, 5 sharp swords pierced through the air from 5 different directions. The 5 sword cultivators, who were also nascent soul cultivators, shouted in unison. That Soaring Snake sect elder didn't even have time to say a second word before he screamed and died under the long swords. However, this was only the beginning. More and more Soaring Snake sect nascent soul elders began to break free from the formations, and rushed out of the valley. Ji Wujiang's robes fluttered slightly, and in a flash, he blocked in front of Meng Qi. Stand behind me. His voice was solemn, and he completely protected her behind him. Okay. Meng Qi nodded obediently. She knew that in the following battle, as long as she didn't drag them down and become their weakness, she would be of the greatest help. Ji Wujiang turned around, and his hand, which was holding a pitch-black narrow saber, moved as fast as lightning, and circled around Meng Qi to draw a formation. Stay here. As he spoke, he was about to flick spirit stones into the formation. However, Meng Qi's movements were faster than his. She had already flicked the remaining 8th stage spirit stones in her hand into the formation. Rays of light lit up, firmly protecting her in the center. Inside, Ji Wujiang only finished speaking at this time. Through the light of the formation, he looked at Meng Qi, who was standing prettily in the center of the formation with a, I'm very obedient, I won't cause trouble look on her face. In the end, the corners of his lips slowly rose. Good girl. Meng Qi seemed to have heard Ji Wujiang talking. However, the entrance of the valley had already fallen into a fierce battle. The sound of spells exploding, the sound of long swords piercing through the air, and all kinds of lights and shadows swirling in the air. She didn't hear it clearly. Ji Wujiang held his pitch-black narrow saber, and his sword chi swept out. As his robes fluttered in the wind, he took a step forward. Look carefully. Ji Wujiang was in midair, and the amethyst 8 trigrams disc flashed. Without turning his head, he said to Meng Qi, It's a battle between formation cultivators. Ji Wujiang, who was wearing a black robe, stabbed his narrow saber into the ground. His figure was as fast as a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he finished drawing the formation and retreated. Several spirit stones flew into the formation in front of him. Countless lightning bolts suddenly struck the several Soaring Serpent sect disciples within 70 to 80 feet of the formation. The lights and shadows were gorgeous, illuminating the 3 pitch-black scars on Ji Wujiang's face. His black robe fluttered, and even his hair was blown by the strong wind caused by the lightning bolts. In a moment, screams were heard, accompanied by a burnt smell. Meng Qi was dazzled by the sight. So powerful. She muttered in a low voice, completely subconsciously. Meng Qi's gaze moved slightly. The black-robed young man's face suddenly became extremely pale. She immediately thought of Ji Wujiang's body. It was strong at times and weak at other times, and it seemed to be somewhat strange. Ji Wujiang. Meng Qi called out loudly. She took out an entire bottle of Dark North pills from her storage bag, and threw it at him. For you. She paused and said again. Be careful. In the beast house in the storage bag, the little white tiger, who was lying lazily on the bed with its eyes restrained, suddenly opened its eyes. It stretched out its paw and gently knocked on the bed. In Meng Qi's mind, Yin Qingyan's voice suddenly sounded again. You want to deal with that soaring serpent sect master? He can't, Yin Qingyan said calmly. Chapter 85. Ji Wujiang, couldn't he? In front of them, the powerful lightning struck for the second time. The soaring snake sect disciples who were enveloped by the lightning couldn't dodge in time, and were once again badly battered by the lightning. Ji Wujiang's black robe fluttered as he stood upright. His thin and tall figure stood in the background of the lightning, and the soaring snake sect disciples who were trembling after being struck by the lightning. Ji Wujiang held a pitch-black narrow blade in his hand as the amethyst 8 trigrams disc beside him emitted a soft purple light. It seemed that he was really strong. With a kacha-kacha sound, the last round of lightning struck down. The soaring snake sect disciples who weren't enveloped by the lightning were naturally shocked. Even the cultivators from Windy Rain Town, who came to help Meng Qi, widened their eyes. For a moment, almost everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at the soaring snake sect disciples who were trembling after being struck by the lightning. And Ji Wujiang's long hair fluttered in the wind. The 3 pitch-black scars on his face were especially clear and terrifying under the light of the lightning. In addition, the other side of his face that was intact was handsome like the son of a god. Such a huge contrast. It was an offensive spirit design that was far more powerful than any spell art that any spell cultivator of the same level could use. Such a handsome, strange and mysterious black-robed man. The eyes of all the cultivators who came to help flashed. They looked at Ji Wujiang, and then looked at Meng Qi who was standing further away. Looking at the frightening lightning in front of them, they were so surprised that they almost forgot the purpose of their trip. Wasn't this the boundary of the medical Xiao Xinglin's sacred ground? Such a frightening and powerful attack. They would think that this was the spell Xiao's attack. The earth-shattering lightning finally dissipated. Several soaring snake sect disciples' skin and flesh were split open. They were scorched black and laid on the ground, unable to stand up. At this time, besides the soaring snake sect's Yuanying elders, there were also some Jindan disciples who rushed through the formation in 2s and 3s, and arrived outside the valley. Meng Qi's gaze quickly swept over them. There were about 20 Jindan disciples. The remaining ones were still trapped in the array formation. Some had already been killed or severely injured, and had lost the ability to fight. There were even more wounds on their bodies. Some of the disciples even had to support each other before they could walk over. These Golden Core disciples would never have thought of this. After risking their lives to rush out of the terrifying hell-like valley, Lin Fan was stunned. It wasn't easy for him to rush out of the valley, but the first thing he saw was the elders of the sect, who had been struck by lightning to the point that they couldn't even fight back. The ordinary disciples of the soaring snake sect were all standing outside the valley in a daze. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. There was panic in their eyes, but more than that, it was fear that they were at a loss for what to do. Do it! Ji Wujiang suddenly said sternly. Those Xiozha who had been dumbfounded suddenly understood. Sword light flashed, and the radiance of magic arts flashed, attacking the soaring snake sect's disciples. Look carefully. Yin Qingyan's voice sounded in Meng Qi's mind again. Those 5 swordsmen. He said, their sword formation. Meng Qi's heart trembled. She originally wanted to ask if Ji Wujiang, who looked very strong, really wasn't a match for the soaring snake sect's sect master, who was in the spirit-severing stage. Yin Qingyan changed the topic. She hurriedly focused on the 5 Yuanying sword Xiao who knew the sword formation. Ji Wujiang had mentioned before that sword formations originated from arrays. Meng Qi had never thought about it in this way before. At this time, she focused on the 5 sword Xiao. She saw that the 5 of them should be using the same set of sword techniques. Not only that, their attack and defense footwork were more or less the same. However, the 5 of them attacked from different directions. Each of them could fill in the gaps of the others. The 5 of them advanced and retreated almost at the same time. After choosing a Yuanying stage elder of the soaring snake sect, the 5 long swords surrounded him. On the surface, It seemed like they were wasting their manpower. However, their movements were really too fast. After a Yuanying stage elder of the Soaring Snake sect was surrounded by the 5 of them, he would die under their swords in half an hour at most. On the contrary, when other Yuanying stage cultivators and Yuanying stage elders of the Soaring Snake sect fought one-on-one, most of them were in a stalemate. The sword technique they're using is the 5 elements sword of the 5 elements 4 symbols sword technique. Yin Qingyan's voice sounded again. However, they haven't learned it well. Part of it may have been lost. Otherwise, it wouldn't take them so long to kill a cultivator of the same realm. The 5 elements 4 symbols sword originates from the 5 elements 4 symbols formation. He continued. This array is still somewhat useful. You medical cultivators sometimes need the 5 elements connate essence qi to cultivate spirit herbs and flowers. This 5 elements 4 symbols formation is the best. It can split the spirit energy of heaven and earth into the 5 elements connate essence qi. When I have time, I'll teach you. Mengqi. Yes, thank you, Senior. Senior. It was rare for Yin Qingyan to be stunned. Didn't he say that she could call him by his name? Senior. Senior, Mengqi called out softly in her mind. Their footwork seems to have come from an array. Yes, Yin Qingyan responded casually. Mengqi didn't say anything else. Her gaze was focused on the 5 sword cultivators. She held the silver medicine knife in her hand. Seeing that those people couldn't attack her for the time being, she squatted. Mengqi squatted down. She looked up at the footwork of the 5 sword cultivators while drawing on the ground with the medicine knife. Oh, Mengqi quickly drew a rough array diagram on the ground. However, the 5 sword cultivators each occupied a corner, and almost never changed positions with each other. Therefore, the array diagram drawn based on their footwork wasn't complete. Mengqi thought for a moment. Then, she looked up at the trajectory of the swords in the air. The tips of the swords flashed with cold light. In just a moment, another elder of the Soaring Snake sect died under the 5 swords. She lowered her head and quickly completed the array. Then, she asked respectfully in a soft voice, Senior, what do you think? Yin Qingyan. Yin Qingyan interrupted Mengqi. In terms of age, he could indeed be Mengqi's senior. However, the calculation of the age of the demon cultivators was different from that of the cultivators in the 3,000 fields. I said that you can call me by my name, he said. Mengqi called that Ji Wujiang, Chu Tianfeng, Qin Xiuma, and even Su Junmo. Didn't they all sound good? Which part of him looked like her senior? But Mengqi was in a difficult position. In her heart, Yin Qingyan was like a god. She didn't dare to disobey his words. However, she really couldn't call him by his name. No buts. Yin Qingyan's tone was indifferent. I don't like being called senior. True Lord Yin. Mengqi probed and called out again. There are so many people with the surname Yin in the 3 realms, Yin Qingyan said again. You and I are not relatives, so you can call me by my name. Mengqi suddenly understood and quickly changed his words. Qingyan's Hinjun. True Lord was the respectful title given by the 3,000 fields to very powerful cultivators with very high realms. It seemed that the demon world and the demon world were the same. This time he shouldn't be angry, right? Mengqi waited nervously. Yin Qingyan was silent for a moment before he finally said, Up to you. Yes. Seeing that the other party finally accepted, Mengqi immediately became happy. Qingyan's Henjun. I drew the array diagram according to their footwork and sword techniques. Okay. Yin Qingyan responded in a low voice. He saw it just now, and he saw it very clearly. It had to be said that although Ji Wujiang's array formation was mediocre, he still had a good eye. Mengqi's talent in array formations was completely beyond his expectations. Yin Qingyan now understood why Ji Wujiang wanted Mengqi to be his disciple. Moreover, he also understood why the person who taught Mengqi the array formation previously taught her the 4 extremes array and the stellar array. If it were him, he couldn't help but want to teach such a talented disciple everything. Qingyan's Henjun. Mengqi called out softly again. Did I do something wrong? No, Yin Qingyan said. You did very well. He looked at the 5 elements array diagram drawn by Mengqi. and almost thought that she had learned this array before. He didn't need to teach her slowly. She only needed to correct a few small problems. Meng Qi suddenly stood up and looked forward. In the valley, dark blue goshawks could be seen soaring into the sky from time to time. At that moment, there was suddenly silence inside. Darkness replaced the original light of the array formation. A vast and mighty pressure poured out from inside. Even Meng Qi, who was standing in the distance and protected by Ji Wujiang's array formation, could not help but be affected by the pressure and shiver. CXEWW. Comet was the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect. It was the spirit-severing stage powerhouse who made people feel uncomfortable with just one sentence in the valley. Ji Wujiang obviously felt it too. He turned his head and quickly glanced at Meng Qi. Then he turned back and looked into the distance. He suddenly clenched his left fist and coughed a few times on his lips. Meng Qi's heart tightened, and she looked at Ji Wujiang worriedly. Feng Zheng took out the Dark North pill she gave him, and threw 3 into his mouth in one go. Even Ji Wujiang could not help but look back at Meng Qi in surprise. He originally thought that Meng Qi, whose medical skills were only at the 3rd grade, would only be able to refine ordinary Dark North pills. Who knew that as soon as the pills entered his mouth, spiritual energy would flow into his spiritual sea from all directions like a trickle. Although it could not quickly replenish his spiritual sea, it was far better than those ordinary 3rd-grade Dark North pills that could be bought on the market. Ji Wujiang's eyes moved slightly. Not only that, he used his divine consciousness to check his spiritual sea, which was originally riddled with holes and cracks, seemed to be a little better than before. Although it was only a little, it was enough to shock Ji Wujiang. Even he could not do anything about his spiritual sea, which was almost broken. He used countless spirit pills and miraculous medicines, but it did not improve at all. There was something wrong with Meng Qi's Dark North pills. Ji Wujiang quickly understood. But there was no hurry now. The most important thing now was to kill the Soaring Snake sect's sect master. He had to let Meng Qi see with his own eyes how powerful he was. He had to let her truly feel the power of a formation cultivator. In this way, perhaps he did not need to kidnap and force Meng Qi himself to change his mind and become a formation cultivator. The corners of Ji Wujiang's mouth raised slightly, and he clenched the pitch-black narrow saber in his hand. He flicked his finger, and the amethyst 8 trigrams disc rotated gently, and the purple light suddenly flourished. At the entrance of the valley, a figure wearing a long dark green robe slowly swept out. The cultivators who came to help had already cooperated with Ji Wujiang to kill 6 or 7 nascent soul elders of the Soaring Snake sect, as well as a dozen or so Golden Core disciples who escaped from the formation in the valley. Of course, they also suffered casualties. At this time, there were still 7 nascent soul cultivators, 5 of which were sword cultivators who knew sword formations. The remaining 2 nascent soul spell cultivators, and some Golden Core cultivators. However, these cultivators were more or less injured. The moment the sect leader appeared, the disciples of the Soaring Snake sect seemed to be encouraged, and their spirits rose. They moved together, and forced the cultivators on Meng Qi's side to retreat, and then turned and ran quickly towards the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect. A group of idiots. The sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect looked coldly at his own disciples and snorted. "You can't even deal with these ants." His voice was still very cold. Every time he opened his mouth to speak, it was like there was an icy poisonous snake covered in mucus crawling past. Meng Qi felt extremely uncomfortable when he heard this. When the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect finished speaking, he suddenly waved his sleeve. A strong gust of wind blew the disciples of the Soaring Serpent School who were shouting "Master" and "Leader" while running towards him. Quite a few Gold Core disciples were even blown to the ground. "All of you retreat," the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect said coldly. The Soaring Snake sect disciples did not dare to disobey, and climbed up from the ground after being blown away, and carefully circled behind their sect leader. Even the nascent soul elders did not make a sound, and silently retreated behind him. "You dare to ambush us halfway." The sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect's gaze was like a poisonous snake's as it swept across the faces of Meng Qi and Ji Wujiang. "I originally planned to leave 20% of the cultivators of Wind Rain Town alive, and become my Soaring Snake sect's lackeys. Since you are in such a hurry to die. He laughed strangely. This seat will grant you your wish. When the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect finished speaking, he reached out, and a jade long whip appeared in his hand. The long whip did not look like anything. Mengqi looked over, and found that the long whip was alive. How was that a long whip? It was clearly an enormous jade poisonous snake. The poisonous snake seemed to have been tamed, its tail held in the hands of the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect, and did not dare to struggle. But its head was raised, its narrow eyes like its master, coldly sweeping across Mengqi and the others. It would occasionally spit out its forked tongue, and make hissing sounds. It's actually a jade-scaled snake, Ji Wujiong slowly said. There's actually a brat who knows what's good for him. The sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect's gaze turned to Ji Wujiong's face, and laughed strangely again. This seat has always treasured talents. Kneel down now. Acknowledge me as your master. And work for me from now on. Then I will spare your life. Ji Wujiong sneered. He was already arrogant enough. He didn't think there would be someone even more arrogant than him. You only know a little trick. A guy who plays with snakes, insects, rats and ants dares to make me acknowledge you as my master? Ji Wujiong laughed coldly. You are not worthy. He suddenly charged forward, the black narrow blade in his hand swiftly stabbing into the ground. The amethyst 8 trigrams disc beside him suddenly shone brightly. As the purple light flashed, a complete formation flew out of it, and headed towards the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect. Amidst the strange laughter, the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect waved the jade-scaled snake whip, and said coldly, "Small." Before he could finish his sentence, the formation that flew out of Ji Wujiong's amethyst 8 trigrams disc quickly landed on the ground and formed a formation. A purple light soared into the sky, and a huge snake head suddenly drilled out of the ground. The snake head moved very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, a complete purple snake was already coiled on the ground. The snake head was upright, and it also spat out its forked tongue, making hissing sounds, and rushed towards the sect leader of the Soaring Snake sect. Ji Wujiong coldly looked up. I told you, even if it's a snake, you are still far from it. As he spoke, the pitch-black narrow blade had already finished drawing the last stroke on the ground. Whoosh! 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 The 9th stage spirit stones in Ji Wujiong's hand flew towards the 6 directions of the formation. Boom! A huge black tortoise suddenly appeared in the middle of the formation. The purple snake from before turned around, nimbly jumped onto the black tortoise, and raised its head to look at the Soaring Snake sect's elder. Attack! Ji Wujiong softly berated. His words were not only a signal for the black tortoise and purple snake to attack, but also a signal for all the Xiuzha to attack. 5 Yuanying sword Xiu moved slightly, and their gleaming long swords suddenly rose into the air, attacking the Soaring Snake sect's sect leader. A Yuanying spell Xiu suddenly flew up, and a red lotus flew out from his side. Mengqi just felt that the red lotus was somewhat familiar. He saw the spell Xiu take 2 steps forward, and the petals of the red lotus rustled down. Lotus steps. Even though the spell Xiu was standing in midair, he walked forward step by step, steadily. Open! He suddenly chuckled softly. In an instant, large flames exploded around the Soaring Snake sect's sect leader. In the blazing flames, 5 sharp swords shot towards the sect leader. At the same time, the black tortoise and purple snake that Ji Wujiong had summoned also bared their fangs. The black tortoise seemed to be clumsy, but when it slammed its claws on the ground, it instantly seemed like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. Although the Soaring Snake sect's sect leader's feet did not step on the ground, even the air around him seemed to be torn apart by the power of this claw. The purple snake was even more swift, and immediately fought with the jade snake. In an instant, Mengqi and the others' attacks were very intense, and the Soaring Snake sect's sect leader seemed to be caught off guard, and could only defend. Mengqi looked at the Soaring Snake sect, and the blood in her chest seemed to be burning. In this instant, she suddenly understood why so many Xiuzha were willing to choose Sword Xiu or Spell Xiu, because at this time, she also wanted to go forward and fight side by side with them. But she also knew that she was only in Juji. If she went forward now, she would only add to the chaos, and become their weakness. Mengqi took a deep breath, and clenched her hands that were hanging by her side. She had to protect herself well, and not be a burden. It's still not enough. Yin Qingyan's voice sounded again. Meng Qi was about to ask, but she didn't need to ask anymore. The power of a spirit-severing cultivator was enough to crush even a nascent soul cultivator, who was one realm lower. Flames, sword light, and black tortoise attacks shook the sky and earth from time to time. The middle-aged man in the jade robe, the sect leader of the soaring snake sect, was still calm. His sleeves were pulled up by the strong wind, and his fingers were like knives, and the light of a spell flickered. A large cloud of green mist suddenly appeared beside him, and the green mist quickly expanded, attacking Ji Wujiang and those Xiuzha from all directions. The one who rushed at the front was the spell Xiu, who also knew lotus steps. He suddenly screamed, and his body fell straight down. It's poisonous. That person screamed and let out a final roar. And then after his body landed, he suddenly turned into a ray of light and disappeared. What a powerful poison! Meng Qi murmured as she looked forward. Killing a nascent soul cultivator in such a short time, it was really too domineering. This time, the ones who screamed were the Xiuzha on Meng Qi's side. Several golden core Xiuzha were clearly further away, but at this time, they suddenly screamed and rolled on the ground, and quickly turned into balls of white light and disappeared. Meng Qi's small face was pale, and she clenched the medicine knife in her hand. If she could be stronger, she wouldn't have to stand here and be of no help. Meng Qi. Yin Qingyan's voice suddenly sounded again. You know how to change the formation of the Great Fire Formation. I'll teach you the second formation. Meng Qi was stunned, and then she heard Yin Qingyan say again. The Surging Waves Academy gave you the Tsangming powder, now refine it for Ji Wujiang. But there's still time. Yin Qingyan said. Ji Wujiang is not so useless, he can hold on until you finish refining the medicine. But Meng Qi still wanted to say something. Yin Qingyan seemed to guess what she was going to say, and interrupted her again. Ji Wujiang is in the spirit-severing stage, but his spiritual sea is severely injured, and his cultivation has dropped. The Tsangming powder will not affect him much. All right. Meng Qi asked. How long will it take? 15 minutes, Yin Qingyan said confidently. If you can learn the second formation of the Great Fire Formation in one go. I can. Ji Wujiang. Meng Qi suddenly called out. She gritted her teeth and said, Do you know the Tsangming powder? You have it. Ji Wujiang turned to look at Meng Qi and quickly said, Give it to me. I need 15 minutes, Meng Qi said. No problem. Ji Wujiang quickly understood Meng Qi's meaning, and a red light flashed in the depths of his eyes. He snapped his fingers and turned to face the soaring snake sect master again. Leave it to me. Meng Qi took a deep breath. Qingyan's Henjun, please advise me. You only have 5 seconds, Yin Qingyan said. Remember it clearly. Just as he finished speaking, a new formation diagram suddenly flashed in Meng Qi's mind. The first formation of the Great Fire Formation was the one she usually used to refine medicine. It was very simple and easy to control. It was Yin. Back then it was specially designed for her to use. Meng Qi gritted her teeth and looked at the second formation of the Great Fire Formation in front of her. The second formation was much more complicated. She didn't dare to be distracted at all, and quickly memorized it. 5 seconds passed in the blink of an eye, and the formation diagram disappeared. Meng Qi held her breath and condensed her qi. She quickly lowered her head, and began to draw the second formation of the Great Fire Formation on the ground. Her qi passed through the medicine knife and went straight into the soil. In the blink of an eye, she finished drawing the entire formation. Meng Qi almost lost her strength. The Great Fire Formation she used before was very simple, but this one was much more complicated. This time, however, it was a lot more complicated. Her spiritual sea had become empty, and because her spiritual aura had been exhausted, she even felt a slight throbbing pain. Meng Qi couldn't care less. She stuffed a dark north pill into her mouth, and took out the small bronze cauldron. She quickly took out the medicinal herbs she needed from her storage bag. Fortunately, when she was in Wind Rain Town, Meng Qi thought it was better to be prepared, and went to the pharmacy to get a lot of medicinal herbs. Qingyan's Henjun. Meng Qi took out 12 8-stage spirit stones and asked first, Is there anything wrong with the formation? However, Yin Qingyin's voice didn't ring out. Meng Qi didn't have time to think about anything else, and inserted the spirit stones into the formation. Raging flames exploded and burned the small bronze cauldron red in the blink of an eye. Meng Qi breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly threw in the medicinal herbs needed to refine the dark north powder. The second formation of the Great Fire Formation this time was much more powerful than the first formation. The fire was fiercer, and the refining speed was much faster. The consumption of qi was also greater. The 12 8-stage spirit stones soon turned into a pile of inconspicuous white debris. Meng Qi threw another 12 into the formation. After adding the spirit stones 6 times, a medicinal fragrance like seawater came out of the small bronze cauldron. Meng Qi exhaled a long breath. It just happened that the time it took to burn an incense stick. Chapter 86. The flames gradually died down. The medicinal fragrance in the small bronze cauldron became even thicker. The presence of the ocean gushed out and then retracted in a flash, merging into the small Dan in the small cauldron. Finally, everything returned to silence. A dark blue round Dan was left in the small bronze cauldron. A smile appeared at the corner of Meng Qi's mouth as she reached out to take the Dan. With a soft crack, she had just taken out the dark cloud powder when the bottom of the small bronze cauldron suddenly cracked as though it could not withstand the previous flames. Immediately after, there were a few more cracking sounds. The small bronze cauldron shattered into 4 or 5 pieces and fell to the ground. Meng Qi. She looked with heartache at the small bronze cauldron that she had used for almost a year. She grabbed the Dan and stood up, shouting, "Ji Wujiang." When she had been making the Dan, Meng Qi had been completely focused and had not dared to be distracted. Looking over now, Ji Wujiang was holding a narrow black blade in his left hand as he panted and looked forward. His face was pale and the 3 wounds were even more obvious. Blood dripped from the fingertips of his right hand that hung by his side. His amethyst 8 trigrams flashed as it spun in circles around him. The purple light flashed quickly. It was clearly a talisman without life, but probably because it had been with its master for too long, it had gradually become connected. Meng Qi actually saw some worry from the 8 trigrams. Ji Wujiang heard Meng Qi's voice but did not turn his head. He made a soft sound and stared deeply at the leader of the Soaring Snake sect. The leader of the Soaring Snake sect floated in the air. The remaining disciples of the Soaring Snake sect behind him, who had been slightly dispirited, had become alert. Their faces were full of smugness as though victory was already in their hands. On Meng Qi's side, only the 5-sword Xiu could still stand. There were still 6 or 7 Jindan Xiuzha who could barely stand behind the 5-sword Xiu. However, there were more wounds on their bodies. All of them appeared to be on the verge of collapse and could not stand properly. The leader of the Soaring Snake sect looked darkly at Meng Qi. He did not appear as relaxed as he had been at the beginning. On his right sleeve, there was a large charred patch. On his exposed arm, there was a wound that was still bleeding. It looked incomparably hideous. "Give me the medicine." Ji Wujiang panted heavily again and slowly took a step back. The Soaring Serpent sect's sect leader snorted coldly. He also transferred the jade phosphorus snake to his left hand and flicked his wrist. The jade phosphorus snake pounced on Meng Qi. Only then did Meng Qi realize that half of the jade-scaled snake's head was missing as well. Only one of its eyes was still shining with a cold light. Many of the scales on his body were missing, revealing his snow-white tender flesh in many places. It looked like it was in the same state as its owner. Just as the jade-scaled snake was about to bite Meng Qi, a circle of white light suddenly appeared around her. The formation left behind by Ji Wujiang reacted quickly and protected Meng Qi. "Don't come out," Ji Wujiang hurriedly reminded. "Okay." Meng Qi looked at the jade-scaled snake with shining eyes. Her small bronze cauldron was already broken, so she could not refine a second Songming powder. She took a deep breath and clenched the pill in her hand. The footwork of the 5-sword cultivators flashed through Meng Qi's mind. She took a step forward, and then quickly rushed out of the formation. "Meng Qi!" Ji Wujiang shouted sternly and rushed toward her. Then, in that instant, a strong medicinal fragrance suddenly erupted from Meng Qi's body. The medicinal fragrance was so strong that it formed a circle of silver light around her body, completely enveloping her thin body. The green-robed girl's elegant face seemed to be enveloped in holy light. Meng Qi's sleeves fluttered in the wind. She stretched out a hand and pointed forward. The white light flowed around her fingertips as if she could hold it in her hand. The jade-scaled snake, which was about to bite Meng Qi, suddenly twisted its thick and long body in panic and desperately dodged to the side. It was as if there was something on her that scared it. Ji Wujiang was stunned, and a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. In Meng Qi's beast storage bag, the little white tiger lying on the bed weakly also slowly raised its head. His gaze was still dim, but a strange look flashed across his azure blue eyes. It was actually, at this time? Oh. Even the soaring snake sect master narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Meng Qi. He said slowly, "You've advanced in your medical cultivation." His voice was still cold, but there was a hint of amazement. "Your medical skills have advanced to 4th grade at the foundation establishment stage. You can be considered to have a promising future." The soaring snake sect master's black pupils were extremely small, and his white pupils almost occupied his entire eyes. He looked exceptionally strange. This pair of eyes had always been extremely cold, like the eyes of a dead person without any vitality. Whoever he looked at would feel uneasy, as if they were being watched by something terrifying. The soaring snake sect master's gaze landed on Meng Qi's face, and there was actually a slight change in his expression. "Are you willing to enter my soaring snake sect and take me as your master?" he said slowly. "Then, I can let you and your friends go." Meng Qi completely ignored him. Her feet didn't stop, and she rushed out like an arrow leaving the bow. Faster. She took a deep breath and moved even faster. Even faster. 3rd grade medical cultivation was similar to the realm of a golden core cultivator. Then, advancing from 3rd grade medical cultivation to 4th grade medical cultivation was equivalent to a golden core cultivator breaking through and entering the nascent soul stage. Cultivators were originally going against the heavens. However, being able to have a breakthrough would also trigger a phenomenon in heaven and earth, and receive a response from the great Tao. The white light around Meng Qi was the phenomenon of her advancing from 3rd grade medical cultivation to 4th grade medical cultivation. That thick and solid white light was the thick and dense medicinal energy. At this time, she was immune to all poisons and all plagues. Everywhere she passed, she would revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. It was very miraculous. However, the duration was extremely short. This was probably the response of the great Tao of medical cultivation, and a method to protect medical cultivators. So the soaring snake sect, Ji Wujiang, and the surviving Xiuzha of Wind and Rain Town who had come to help saw it. Meng Qi was like a whirlwind as she charged towards Ji Wujiang. "For you." She raised her hand and flicked the dark firmament powder into the other's hand. Seeing Ji Wujiang raise his hand to take the dark firmament powder, Meng Qi's lips curled slightly. Her feet did not stop as she charged towards the wounded Wind and Rain Town Xiuzha. The thick medicinal energy first reached Meng Qi, and like a spring breeze, it brushed across the wounded bodies of those people. Those Jindan Xiuzha who had almost lost their ability to fight due to their wounds looked in shock at the wounds on their bodies that started to heal at a visible rate. The poison that the sect master of the soaring snake sect had left in their bodies that made them powerless started to slowly dissipate. In their Ling seas, the Ling energy started to recover. In just a moment, these Xiuzha became spirited again and could fight another round. As to the 5 Yuanying sword Xiu who were lightly wounded, Meng Qi just ran past them, and then quickly turned around and charged towards Ji Wujiang again. The white light around her started to fade, and the medicinal energy also started to dissipate. Meng Qi charged to Ji Wujiang's side in one breath, the white light around her so faint that it was almost indistinguishable. All of this seemed to have happened in the blink of an eye. Even the sect master of the soaring snake sect had not thought that Meng Qi would do this. His eyes that were more white than black landed on Meng Qi's face again. "Do you know? What you just sent out is the medicinal energy and holy light that many medical Xiu dream of. If you absorb it all and use it for yourself, you will be able to reach level 4. He can directly enter the 2nd realm of the 4th rank." Meng Qi stood upright and glanced at Ji Wujiang out of the corner of her eyes. Ling energy surged around Ji Wujiang's body. The Tsangming powder had started to take effect. He was originally a spirit-severing cultivator, But he was seriously injured and his lingxi was damaged for some special reasons, so he couldn't display his original strength. Now that the Tsangming powder entered his body, the domineering medicinal energy instantly spread throughout his body. His lingxi expanded forcefully, and even the original cracks were temporarily covered by the Tsangming powder. Meng Qi didn't mind chatting with the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect for a while to stall for time. Is that so? She smiled faintly. It's just the first realm. But if you lose your life, what's the use of realms? The sect master of the Soaring Snake sect laughed strangely. You're quite interesting, little girl. If you join my sect, I'll give you the position of eldest martial sister. From then on, the sect will have 300 disciples and 3,000 lackeys at your disposal. Is that so? Meng Qi raised her chin slightly. I'm just in the foundation building realm. What if they don't accept me? Don't worry. The sect master of the Soaring Snake sect looked at Meng Qi and glanced at Ji Wujiang from time to time. They won't dare to disobey. He felt more and more strange. In the blink of an eye, Ji Wujiang, whose cultivation level was lower than his, had spiritual energy surging out of his body like mountains and seas, then quickly converging back into his body. In just a short while he seemed to have been reborn, becoming a completely different person. The corners of Meng Qi's mouth twitched slightly. She said slowly, "But what about commanding disciples?" She suddenly took a big step back and said, "Quick." The last word Meng Qi said was directed at Ji Wujiang. The black-robed young man suddenly raised the corners of his mouth and held the pitch-black narrow saber with one hand. He and Meng Qi had only cooperated a few times, but they seemed to have a tacit understanding. The narrow saber was inserted into the ground, and the black figure quickly circled around her. With a wave of her hand, Meng Qi threw out a handful of 8th-stage spirit stones. The formation shone brightly and firmly protected her. Ji Wujiang's cultivation level recovered, and he even became a peak spirit severing stage expert. In terms of cultivation level, he already surpassed the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect. The strength of his formation was above Meng Qi's. Meng Qi believed that no matter how powerful the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect was, he wouldn't be able to break this formation for the time being. She curled her lips at the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect and said, "But my goal is to pursue the great Tao of medical cultivation, and my goal is to become a 9th-stage great doctor. I'm not interested in commanding disciples." Ji Wujiang laughed. Holding the pitch-black narrow saber, he turned around and looked at the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect. The amethyst 8 trigrams disc swayed around him leisurely, flashing with purple light. It looked very cheerful. "You should feel honored." Ji Wujiang suddenly raised his saber and jumped up. "Since 10,000 years ago, after the upheaval of the 3 realms, you are the first lucky." As he spoke, spirit energy gushed out from the tip of the narrow saber, and it swept across the ground. It was much sharper than the narrow saber. The expression of the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect finally changed. "What did you just take?" "I saw a peak spirit severing stage formation cultivator attack, and a cultivator who died in an unprecedented and rare formation." Ji Wujiang was incomparably arrogant, and his last saber slashed down. "Meng Qi!" He shouted loudly. "Meng Qi!" 7 Xian spirit stones shot out from her hand. The amethyst 8 trigrams disc flew up and collected all 7 Xian spirit stones. The 8 trigrams disc suddenly glowed with purple light, and the light split into 7 rays and rushed towards the formation. With a loud boom, the purple light on the formation rumbled. In the blink of an eye, countless spells and long swords gushed out from the formation and attacked the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. From Ji Wujiang rushing out, to setting up the formation, to Meng Qi throwing out spirit stones, to the amethyst 8 trigrams disc absorbing spirit energy to activate the formation. In the blink of an eye, the face of the high and mighty sect master of the Soaring Snake sect was illuminated purple by the spells and long swords. There were really too many spells and long swords. In addition to attacking the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect, the Soaring Snake sect disciples behind him were also enveloped by the purple light. They didn't even have time to scream. Every disciple was hit by countless spells and long swords, and they instantly twisted and fell to the ground. "Ah!" The sect master of the Soaring Snake sect suddenly shouted angrily. Green mist rushed out from his body, and the jade phosphorus snake trembled, attacking the densely packed spells and sword formation. Jade light sparkled, and its might was greatly boosted. However, the purple light was even more tyrannical. Ji Wujiang sneered as he raised the pitch-black narrow saber, stretched out his hand, and quickly drew a second formation on the ground. Mengqi. He raised his hand and shouted. Mengqi. She flicked her finger, and another 3 Xianling stones flew into the sky. The amethyst 8 trigrams disc swayed as it flew over, and quickly absorbed the 3 spirit stones. Then it swayed and flew towards the new formation. A huge longbow slowly appeared on top of the array. 3 purple long arrows were knocked on the bowstring. The longbow was quickly pulled taut. With a whoosh, the sharp energy cut through the sky. The 3 purple long arrows shot towards the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect, and steadily hit the center of the green mist. Ah! With a long scream, the green mist around the sect master of the Soaring Snake sect dissipated. He who had been arrogant just now, fell from the sky in a sorry state. Before he even fell to the ground, more spells rushed up and blasted him into a ray of white light. With this, the entire Soaring Snake sect, from the sect master down, had been annihilated. Mengqi took a deep breath, and looked at the entrance to the mountain valley that was gradually quieting down. It wasn't just her. Even the Xiozha of Wind Rain Town that had come to help felt incredulous. It was over like this? They instinctively turned to look at Ji Wujiang, and then looked at Mengqi, who was still standing obediently in the protective formation. The young girl was still standing in her original spot. Her Zhuji cultivation had originally made her seem weak. But those Xiozha did not feel she was weak at all. This girl was a bit interesting. She was very clear about her own cultivation, and never did anything that would drag others down. Hiding obediently in the formation for protection, really. Very obedient. Similar thoughts flashed through the minds of all the Xiozha. It was very rare for a Zhuji to break through and become a 4th-grade medical Xiao. Supposedly, Miss Xue of the Wind Alliance's Xue family, who was famous for her great talent in medicine, had only become a 4th-grade medical Xiao when she was at the 3rd or 4th level of Jindan. The Xiozha of Wind Rain Town that had survived until the end were not in a hurry to leave. They looked at Mengqi, and countless thoughts flashed through their minds. No wonder only 2 people had entered this year's Holy Land of Medical Xiao competition. Was this a genius disciple with limitless potential that the entire Medical Xiao Conference Alliance had raised with the power of the entire alliance? Surnamed Meng. Then he was not a direct descendant of the 4 great families. Then was he a specially recruited disciple of the Wind Alliance? Or from another large sect? He looked very young. Who was this black-robed Xiozha called Ji Wujiang? Were the 2 of them both medical Xiao? They did not look like traditional medical Xiao, especially their offensive methods. Wasn't that the formation of the forging Xiao? What was the dark firmament powder that Mengqi had given Ji Wujiang before he fought the leader of the Soaring Snake sect? He had suddenly become very powerful. The eyes of the 5 Yuanying sword Xiao that knew the sword formation flashed slightly. Their sect had passed down this sword formation 10,000 years ago. It could be called the most powerful sword scripture of the sect. When the 5 of them worked together, they could defeat multiple enemies. It could attack and defend, very wondrous. This was also a secret of the sect. Only those that became elders of the sect or the direct disciples of the sect leader would be given this sword formation. They had been immersed in the path of sword formations for a long time. Their understanding of formations was more than other sections. Mengqi and Ji Wujiang's endless formations dazzled the 5 people. A Xiozha from Wind Rain Town suddenly exclaimed, "We are leaving." Mengqi raised her eyes to look at the dozen or so Xiozha that were still alive. She smiled sweetly at them, 2 small dimples showing on her cheeks. She knew that they were the same as the mayor of Wind Rain Town. Dummies left behind by the ancient great powers to test their juniors in the grand competition. Mengqi still raised her hands in salute to these people and said politely, "Thank you for your help today." Those Xiozha looked at Mengqi with complicated expressions. The second test of the grand competition had ended. They should leave. Soon, one by one, these Xiozha turned into white smoke and dissipated in the air. Outside the valley, only Mengqi and Ji Wujiang were left. Everything was silent. The endless night sky shrouded the green mountain. The tall mountain peak looked even more steep in the night. Xiozhia were not affected by day and night, and could see clearly at night. But after the great battle, under the night sky, fatigue gradually flooded Meng Qi's mind. She exhaled lightly and raised her eyes to look at Ji Wujiang. Beside the black-robed youth, the amethyst 8 trigrams disc was still swaying up and down. He looked like a naughty child. Ji Wujiang reached out and stabbed his black narrow blade into the mud. He had always been arrogant and unruly. No one in the world could enter his eyes. After the great battle, under the quiet night sky, he looked at the green robe brushing Meng Qi's black robe. The green-robed girl was still standing there calmly. It was hard to tell from her simple and elegant face that she was actually such a decisive person. You. Just as Ji Wujiang opened his mouth, his body suddenly softened, and he fell to the ground. Are you all right? Meng Qi hurriedly walked over to him. Ji Wujiang's eyes were tightly closed as he lay on the grass. He had already fainted. Meng Qi hesitated and then formed a spell with her hand, reaching towards Ji Wujiang's forehead. Unexpectedly, the moment she moved her fingers, a slender, strong, and cold hand gripped her wrist tightly. I'm fine. Ji Wujiang's eyes were still closed as he said in a slightly hoarse voice. The dark firmament powder is a bit strong. And Meng Qi responded. She gently twisted her wrist, and Ji Wujiang let go of her. Is your Lingxi injured? Meng Qi asked. Ji Wujiang. Why do you ask? The effects of the dark firmament powder are extremely strong. After ordinary cultivators take it, they won't be able to use spirit energy for 3 days. Although the damage to the Lingxi isn't serious, it still needs time to recover. If the Lingxi is already injured, it won't be affected by the drug, Meng Qi said. Humph. Ji Wujiang snorted softly. Meng Qi reached out and pinched her wrist that was slightly sore from Ji Wujiang's grip. She then said, I'm a foundation establishment cultivator. An ordinary person who can't use spirit energy won't be able to stop me so easily. Ji Wujiang snorted softly again. He didn't intend to explain, so Meng Qi didn't ask anymore. Everyone had their own secrets. She was never the kind of person who would get to the bottom of things. She hugged her knees and sat next to Ji Wujiang. After such a fierce battle, even she was too lazy to do anything for the time being. Yawinku, come. How did you make the dark firmament powder that I can take? Ji Wujiang was silent for a long while. He was still lying on the grass with his eyes closed and asked lazily. Meng Qi was right. His Lingxi already had countless cracks. He didn't lack the dark firmament powder. However, he had overused his spirit energy and was weak all over. He just wanted to lie down and not move at all. Ji Wujiang waited for a moment, but Meng Qi didn't answer. He opened his eyes and saw that Meng Qi was lying on the grass at some unknown time. The green-robed girl's eyes were closed. Her long eyelashes drooped and her breathing became long. She had also fallen asleep. Ji Wujiang's lips curved slightly. His gaze moved from Meng Qi's face to the night sky. The night sky was deep and scattered with a few stars. All of this seemed to be no different from the 3,000 worlds. He couldn't even remember how many years it had been since he had fought side by side with someone. Thinking back, this feeling seemed to be quite good. A teammate like Meng Qi wasn't annoying at all. When needed, she was quite reliable. She didn't show off and was obedient and sensible. The rarest thing was that her talent in Dharma formations was something Ji Wujiang had never seen before. However, it seemed that her medical talent was quite high too. Even the sect master of the Soaring Serpent sect wanted to take her as his disciple. Forget it. He should let Meng Qi become his disciple. This way, he would have a sensible, obedient, and extremely talented disciple by his side in the future. How satisfying. Ji Wujiang closed his eyes. The pitch-black narrow saber suddenly bounced up from the ground. The narrow saber leaped into the air. Thin black threads fell from the saber and enveloped Ji Wujiang and Meng Qi. At the same time, in the Dharma cultivator and sword cultivator sects of the 3,000 worlds and 4 realms, there were disciples who returned to their sects after receiving the easiest trial mission of the Holy Land of Medical Cultivators, which only happened once every 10 years. Some of them were dejected, and some couldn't believe that they had failed. After all, if they died during the mission, although they wouldn't die, their cultivation level would drop by 1. However, these disciples couldn't understand why the trial mission this time was so difficult. The senior brothers and senior sisters who had received the medical cultivation Holy Land trial all said that this was the easiest trial mission in the sect. This was because they only needed to pass the trial alive to complete the mission. In this trial, everyone would have 1 or 2 medical cultivators to take care of them. It was almost impossible for them to die. No one expected that the legendary situation where everyone had 1 or 2 medical cultivators to take care of them didn't happen. Instead, they were dragged to the wilderness to besiege the Soaring Serpent sect, who was extremely good at using poison. The sect master of the Soaring Serpent sect was not only good at using poison, but his cultivation level also crushed them. One had to know that the disciples who could receive such a sect trial mission were at most at the nascent soul stage. There were also some sect disciples who left the trial boundary and returned to their own sects. But they didn't have time to hide the surprise on their faces. Most of these disciples were only stunned for a moment before they quickly rushed to their masters, sect masters and elders, anxiously reporting to them what they had seen and heard in the trial boundary. Just as Mengqi and Ji Wujiong were relaxing and resting in the boundary, in the 4 realms of the 3,000 worlds, a secret news began to spread. Medical cultivation might be on the rise. In this Holy Land trial, there were 2 unconventional medical cultivators. A young female medical cultivator named Mengqi advanced to a 4th grade medical cultivator, with a foundation establishment cultivation level. Moreover, when she broke through, she was favored by the heavenly Tao in her medical skills, and was shrouded in the holy light of medicinal qi. Obviously, she could directly advance by a small realm, but Mengqi actually used it to save people without hesitation. That generous appearance was definitely a direct disciple cultivated by a large sect, which was why she didn't hesitate, and was so carefree. The other black-robed young man, Ji Wujiong, almost couldn't tell that he was a medical cultivator. These 2 people's knowledge of formations was far above the current weapon cultivators who were the best at formations in the 3,000 worlds. These sword cultivator and spell cultivator disciples of the large sects had never seen formations that could be used as a means of attack. In their eyes, formations were used to refine weapons. It was what those weapon cultivators who didn't have the ability to protect themselves except for magic treasures and weapons were good at. Overnight, even some Xiozha in the Medical Cultivator Assembly Alliance received this news. In the apricot forest, the mess on the ground had long been cleaned up. The Medical Cultivation Conference continued as usual. However, on the 12 mountain peaks, the pavilion master of the Falling Star Pavilion, Pei Mufeng, never appeared again. The medical cultivators in the apricot forest seemed to have forgotten the crisis that everyone encountered that day. They knew that if they mentioned this matter again, it was equivalent to making an enemy of the Wind Alliance, the 4 great clans, and even the Medical Cultivation Conference Alliance. The medical cultivators still sat on the grass in the apricot forest and listened to the teachings of the elders of the top 10 medical cultivator sects on the 12 mountain peaks. They would also cherish this rare opportunity to listen to the teachings of the elders of the large sections. However, without the competition, the Medical Cultivation Conference that everyone had been looking forward to for 10 whole years seemed to lack some flavor. Xue Jinwen stood at the back of the Wind Alliance's Xue family. Her eyelids drooped slightly and covered the light in her eyes. All of her memories started from that day when she was about to reach Descending Star City and met that strange man and woman. When she woke up, she was already at the Xue family's residence in Descending Star City. Eldest sister and youngest sister's tone towards her was incomparably cold. Especially youngest sister, who kept questioning her why she came and said that she had embarrassed the Xue family in the apricot forest. Xue Jinwen bit her lower lip lightly. However, she still stayed no matter how angry youngest sister was. This was because she heard the names Mengqi and Su Junmo. Xue Jinwen did not know if this Mengqi was the little Qi she knew. However, her instincts told her that this matter had something to do with the little Qi she knew. This was because little Qi had asked her for the bamboo scroll for the Medical Cultivation Conference, but it had never appeared. On the 12th mountain peak, an elder medical cultivator sighed softly and ended his sermon. The apricot forest was completely silent. The atmosphere was still somewhat gloomy. At this moment, There was a sudden commotion at the entrance of the apricot forest. Everyone's gaze instinctively turned towards the entrance. Xue Jingwen was no exception. At the entrance of the apricot forest, Su Junmo and Si Kongxing walked over quickly side by side. Beside them was Pei Mufeng, who had disappeared for a few days. Sect leader Xue, Su Junmo walked quickly to the 12th mountain peak and cupped his fists at the Wind Alliance leader. He did not intend to be courteous and went straight to the point. Sect leader Xue, do you know that Meng Qi and the black-robed man, Ji Wujiang, are currently in the barrier of the Grand Tournament of St. Lands? His gaze was as sharp as a knife as he said without hesitation, Sect leader Xue, please open the barrier again and let us in. Chapter 87. When Meng Qi woke up, the sky was already bright. Wisps of black mist fell down, blocking the sunlight for her. Ji Wujiang's pitch-black narrow saber floated in front of her. Under the sunlight, it looked rather unsophisticated. Meng Qi silently stared at the strange pattern on the saber's hilt for a while before slowly coming back to her senses. Yesterday, they killed the Soaring Serpent Sect's sect master. Annihilated the Soaring Serpent Sect's disciples who threatened to slaughter Stormy Town. And saved the ordinary residents of Stormy Town. Did this count as completing the mission? Meng Qi thought as she sat up. The pitch-black narrow saber seemed to have eyes. As she sat up, it jumped to the side as well. It stood swaying in the air, and the saber's hilt even moved closer to Meng Qi. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked a bit like a little spiritual beast that wanted to please its master, and wanted its master to touch it. Meng Qi was amused by her own thoughts. She couldn't help but smile. She reached out and gently touched the saber's hilt. The saber's hilt was icy cold. Just by touching it with her fingertips, she felt a bone-piercing chill. You're awake? Ji Wujiang's voice came from behind her. Meng Qi turned her head and saw the black-robed young man sitting lazily on the grass. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but under the sunlight, the originally pitch-black scars on Ji Wujiang's face seemed to be lighter in color. They didn't look so terrifying. He wasn't sitting cross-legged either. It was obvious that he was cultivating. His palms were facing up. Wisps of black mist slowly rose from his palms. Are you okay? Meng Qi stood up and asked. The Tsangming powder was very overbearing. Ji Wujiang looked fine yesterday. She didn't know if he would feel a little uncomfortable after a night. The black-robed young man looked up at Meng Qi and said, I'm fine. He paused and said, the Tsangming powder. Did that person from Surging Waves Academy give it to you? Meng Qi did not answer this question. I've only heard of the named Tsangming powder. I know that there's a sect of medical cultivators in the southern border near the sea. They're skilled in refining this kind of pill. It can forcefully raise a cultivator's cultivation to the extreme in a short amount of time. Ji Wujiang continued. I didn't expect you to know it. Meng Qi moved his body. He didn't want to talk about the Surging Waves Academy. Your medical skills have reached the 4th grade? Yes. There was nothing to hide about this. Meng Qi nodded frankly. What's your current foundation establishment stage? Level 5? Ji Wujiang glanced at Meng Qi. Level 4 medical skills? TSK. The Xue family of the Wind Alliance really knows how to boast. That little girl from the Xue family had been praised to the skies by them. He said that there was a medical genius in his family that was hard to come by in 1,000 years, and that he had just formed his Azoth Corps not long ago, but he was already able to enter the 4th grade of medicine. TSK Tisk, I'll take you to the Xue family later. Those old men of the Xue family probably won't be happy. Ahahaha. Meng Qi. She looked left and right, then walked towards her broken bronze cauldron. After refining the Tsangming powder yesterday, the small cauldron broke. This small cauldron wasn't something rare, and it had accompanied her for a long time. Meng Qi reached out and gently stroked the broken pieces on the ground. After a night, there were some water droplets left on the broken pieces of the small cauldron. Ji Wujiang sat on the ground and looked at her. It's just an ordinary small cauldron. Don't worry about it. After we leave here, I'll find a few good ones for you to choose from. Meng Qi raised her eyebrows slightly. After solving a difficult problem, her medical skills had advanced to the 4th grade. She was in a good mood and rarely joked with Ji Wujiang. After we leave here, you have to pay me back my spirit stones and give me my small cauldron. Why do I feel like you didn't get any benefits from entering the barrier, and even owe me a debt? I'm sorry. Ji Wujiang snorted. If you really feel sorry, then worship me as your teacher. Meng Qi turned her head. She clearly stated her attitude. She didn't want to be entangled in this kind of matter. Also, after having fought side by side, she didn't want to treat Ji Wujiang coldly. After a moment of silence, Ji Wujiang suddenly asked, "Can you still make the Tsongming powder?" He was actively changing the topic. Meng Qi naturally wouldn't mention it again. I don't have a medicine cauldron, no. She shook her head. I don't have the herbs either. She was slightly curious. The Tsongming powder forcefully opens the Ling Si, causing cracks to appear in the Ling Si and Ling energy to leak out. After normal Xiozha use it once, they won't be able to use Ling energy for 3 days. You seem fine? Come here. Ji Wujiang grinned at her. He pulled his hand back, and the black mist in his palm was all absorbed into his body. He reached out a hand towards Meng Qi. Meng Qi hurriedly walked over. Yesterday, she had thought that Ji Wujiang was unconscious and had wanted to see where he was injured. The other's refusal had been very clear. She hadn't thought that he would be so generous as to let her examine him. Meng Qi was very curious. She reached out and gently placed her hand on Ji Wujiang's wrist. Spells flashed at her fingertips, and Ling energy was sent into Ji Wujiang's body. Ah! Meng Qi exclaimed. She suddenly pulled back her hand as though she had been bitten. Her Ling energy had just entered the other's body when Ji Wujiang's Ling energy naturally fought back and bounced her away. But in this short moment, Meng Qi also felt the overwhelming and domineering Ling energy in the other's body. Also, the Ling Si that was riddled with holes as though it had been through a calamity for thousands of years. She had never seen a Ling Si that was shattered to such a state. Meng Qi's brow furrowed slightly as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. The Ling Si was damaged, and there was no more Ling energy. All the Xiozha in the 3,000 worlds, even Yao Xiao and Mo Xiao, could not escape this rule. Ji Wujiang's Ling Si should have been severely injured, and the cracks added by the domineering effects of the dark firmament powder did not seem serious. No wonder she felt that the Ling energy around his body was sometimes turbulent and sometimes weak. But how did he do it? His Ling Si was damaged, and there was no more Ling energy. Logically speaking, he should have no Ling energy at all. Curious. Ji Wujiang grinned again. Curious. Meng Qi nodded. But I will not take you as my teacher just to know the reason. Ji Wujiang snorted softly. The wounds on his face twisted as his expression changed. Meng Qi focused on the 3 black wounds. They should have been caused by a weapon that was tainted with Mo energy. But she didn't know what kind of Mo energy it was, and what effect did it have on Ji Wujiang? Was it related to his injured Ling Si? You're curious about the wounds? Ji Wujiang raised his brow. Humph. This time it was Meng Qi who snorted softly. She was indeed curious. But no matter how curious she was, she couldn't become Ji Wujiang's disciple just like that. Meng Qi looked around and changed the topic. Have we completed the second test? After all, this was the barrier of the medical cultivators tournament, but she led people to do what sword cultivators and dharma cultivators loved to do. In the beginning, Meng Qi had no choice but to do it in order to protect Wind Rain Town, because there were too few people entering the barrier of the tournament. But after a fierce battle, standing at the place where they had fought side by side last night, Meng Qi could also feel the hot blood in her body that had not been extinguished. She somewhat understood why there were so many sword cultivators and dharma cultivators in the Trichiliocosm. It was indeed not bad to live a carefree and unrestrained life occasionally. Meng Qi closed her eyes and restrained the fighting spirit in her heart. She raised her hand and casually used the meditation art. After her medical skills advanced to the 4th grade, all the spells she originally knew improved by a small realm. Spiritual energy circulated in her palm, and the light emitted by the meditation art seemed to have substance. Meng Qi happily withdrew her spiritual energy. Fighting spirit and hot-bloodedness were indeed not as happy as the improvement of her medical skills. Ji Wujiang glanced at the smiling Meng Qi and knew what she was happy about. He turned his head and looked around. Since last night, this place had been very peaceful. Nothing unusual had happened. Meng-Chi also began to look around. Should we go back to Wind Rain Town and look for the mayor? Let's go. Ji Wujiang nodded. Since they had received the mission from the mayor, perhaps they should look for him to start the next test. I wonder how many tests there are in the barrier of this tournament, Meng-Chi murmured. The second test was already much more difficult than the first. The third test would definitely be more difficult than the second. If there was a fourth or fifth test, would it be impossible for her and Ji Wujiang to get out of this barrier? In particular, her bronze cauldron was broken. Thinking of this, Meng-Chi turned her head and looked at the broken bronze cauldron on the ground. I hope Wind Rain Town can find a new cauldron for me too. Huh? Before she finished speaking, her eyes suddenly widened. What's that? Ji Wujiang also turned his head and followed her gaze. At the entrance of the valley, spots of green light slowly flew up from the ground and gathered together in midair. The green light grew more and more until it finally formed the shape of a door. Meng-Chi and Ji Wujiang looked at each other and walked side by side toward the door. With a creaking sound, the door formed by the green light slowly turned around. Behind it, there was a circular 8 trigrams plate. On the 8 trigrams plate, 8 positions were listed one by one. Qianzhen, Qinzhen, Kuan, Sun, Li, and Dui. 8 dark green ancient characters were arranged in order. It should be the reward, Ji Wujiang said. Yes. Meng-Chi also nodded. But how should she choose? In the previous round, she knew whether it was a bamboo scroll, a jade scroll, a pill, or a natural treasure, but she didn't know the specific content. Xiaoshiding gap. Calm this time, she didn't even know what could be inside. Choose whatever you want. After Ji Wujiang finished speaking, he reached out and pressed the dark green Qian character. With another creaking sound, the entire 8 trigrams plate turned around, and a small jade box was placed behind it. The jade box was carved out of a piece of 1,000-year-old cold jade. Just this box alone was quite precious. Ji Wujiang reached out and picked up the jade box, opened it and took a look. Your favorite? Meng-Chi. She didn't care about Ji Wujiang's slight teasing and watched curiously as he sent his spiritual energy into the jade scroll. Ah! Ji Wujiang's face suddenly froze. What is it? Meng-Chi quickly asked. Magic array? Yes. Ji Wujiang's tone was also full of confusion, and he looked down at the jade scroll in his hand. The jade scroll was warm, and a small Ji character was carved on the back. Ji Wujiang almost jumped up. It's from the Ji family. His expression suddenly became serious, and he sent his spiritual energy into the jade scroll again, quickly scanning the contents of the jade scroll. Meng-Chi looked at the unpredictable expression on his face. Although she was very curious, she knew that this probably involved Ji Wujiang's family matters, so she shouldn't ask too much. She turned to look at the 8 trigrams plate that was slowly rearranging itself. Except for the Qian character that had become dim, the rest of the characters were still bright dark green. Meng-Chi's name had a Qi character, so she simply reached out and pressed the Zhen character. With another creaking sound, the 8 trigrams plate turned around again. Behind the 8 trigrams plate, there was also a small box. The box was carved out of a large piece of green jade, and it was warm to the touch. Just the box alone was very precious. Meng-Chi reached out and took the box down. She opened the box and there was a small bamboo scroll inside. She couldn't help but smile. It seemed that the great Tao of medical cultivation really favored her. Although heavenly materials and earthly treasures and elixirs were rare, they were gone after they were used. Bamboo scrolls and jade scrolls were more precious to her. Meng-Chi took out the bamboo scroll and sent a bit of spiritual energy into it. Ji Wujiang had already put away the jade scroll with the Ji character engraved on it. His eyes flashed, and his expression still looked a little strange, but he still glanced at the bamboo scroll in Meng-Chi's hand. It seems that the powerful seniors of your medical cultivation really favor you. They give you your favorite things every time. He paused and asked, what is it? Meng-Chi put away the bamboo scroll, and her expression became strange. The refining method of a natal magic weapon. Ji Wujiang. Even for him, his eyes flashed with a blazing light. In the 3 realms of the 3 realms, the demon realm, and the devil realm, only the cultivators of the 3 realms refined natal magic weapons. But tens of thousands of years ago, the formation cultivators were annihilated, and most of the forging formations were lost. The refining methods of countless talismans and weapons were no longer known to the world. Right now, the cultivators of the three realms could still use the spirit sea as a furnace to refine natal magic weapons or weapons. But most of them were relatively simple. A sword was a sword. At most, it could be trained to be connected to the mind. Xue Chengxian used silver needles, but they were the most common natal magic weapons of medical cultivators. Many medical cultivators use silver needles as their natal magic weapons. In this regard, even a prestigious family like the Wind Alliance's Xue family was similar to ordinary medical cultivators. The books of the three realms recorded that tens of thousands of years ago was a glorious and magnificent era. At that time, there were many powerful cultivators of all realms, and the light of all kinds of natal magic weapons lit up the sky. There were thousands of forms, rich, and each had their own wonders. The refining methods of these natal magic weapons were almost all lost. Now, the battle between the three sisters had gradually returned to the most primitive battle of cultivation. Ji Wujiang was a formation expert. Tens of thousands of years ago, weapon cultivators were just a branch of formation cultivators. He knew more about these legends than ordinary people, and was clearer about them. For example, the Xinglin sacred ground of the medical cultivators. As soon as he stepped in, he knew that it was definitely passed down by a powerful medical cultivator tens of thousands of years ago. It was something that the current cultivators could not refine even if they used all the power of the three realms. So the forging method of the natal magic weapon obtained here. Ji Wujiang's gaze became hot again. When he spoke again, his voice was somewhat hoarse. What kind of magic weapon is it? Mengqi glanced at him. Unlike Ji Wujiang, she did not know the preciousness of the forging method of the natal magic weapon. 5 spirit cauldron, Mengqi said. Ji Wujiang slowly exhaled, and his voice became serious. Mengqi, no one else can know about this except you and me. Do you understand what I mean? Mengqi raised her eyebrows and looked at Ji Wujiang. Even if they are your best friends, and even if you have a Dao companion in the future, you can't tell them. Ji Wujiang's tone became even more severe. Do you understand? You should know that the three realms have indeed experienced many disasters in the past tens of thousands of years. Sometimes it was the invasion of the Mo realm or the Yao realm, and sometimes it was internal strife among the cultivators. Ji Wujiang said. Mengqi nodded. Every time a great treasure appears, there is bound to be a storm of blood that lasts for several years, or even decades. Ji Wujiang said slowly. His tone was grave, and was no longer the frivolous person who mocked everyone. Mengqi's expression also unconsciously became serious. Fortunately, it's within the barrier of the grand competition. Fortunately, only the two of us came in this time. Otherwise, Ji Wujiang narrowed his eyes slightly. You might not be able to walk out of the Xinglin sacred land alive. Those sanctimonious elders of the Medical Cultivation Spell Assembly Alliance, the 4 great families of the Wind Alliance, and your so-called benevolent doctors who help the world and save people can crush you at any time. Just for it, Mengqi. Before Mengqi could answer, Yin Qingyan's voice sounded in her mind. Agree with him. He paused and said again, he's right. Mengqi believed that Ji Wujiang would not joke with her about this matter. When Yin Qingyan spoke again, she instantly understood the seriousness of the matter. Okay. Mengqi nodded subconsciously. Remember my words. Ji Wujiang pointed at Mengqi and said coldly. Mengqi nodded heavily again. In her mind, Yin Qingyan was silent for a moment, then suddenly said slowly, if you find a chance, kill him too. Before she finished speaking, Ji Wujiang also said, Mengqi. Mengqi was stunned. Yin Qingyan did not continue. Even though he didn't finish his sentence, his meaning was clear. Ji Wujiang suddenly raised his hand and placed it on his chest where his heart was. He clasped his middle finger and thumb together with a solemn expression, and his voice was even more serious than his expression. I, in the name of the head of the Ji family, swear on my soul that I will never tell anyone that Mengqi has the refining method of the 5 spirit cauldron. If I violate this oath, heaven and earth will hate me. At least you know your place. Let him live for the time being. Yin Qingyan's voice sounded again unhurriedly. But Mengqi, don't trust him too much. Ji family is not a good person, he said. Yes. This time, even though it was Yin Qingyan's order, Mengqi hesitated slightly. When they first met, Ji Wujiang did not seem like a good person. But he showed mercy and did not really hurt Qin Xiaoma. Later, although he stirred up a mess in the medical cultivators' assembly, none of the medical cultivators died because of him. After entering the barrier of the competition, Ji Wujiang began to say that he would cut him into pieces, and he even exchanged what he had previously obtained with him. Now he even took the initiative to swear on his soul to help him keep the secret of the 5-spirit cauldron. After spending a few days together, Mengqi did not hate Ji Wujiang. He acted in an extreme way and seemed to dislike everyone, but he was not a bad person. But she could not disobey Yin Qingyan's words. Although she was a little embarrassed, Mengqi still agreed. Yin Qingyan's voice sounded even more powerless than before. Mengqi wanted to ask, but he had changed the topic every time before. She also knew that he would not tell her. She pursed her lips and looked up to see Ji Wujiang turn his back to her and stride towards the door. Let's go. Okay. Mengqi also followed. The 8 trigrams on the door had disappeared. Although the door seemed to be made of green light, it opened with a push. Ji Wujiang stepped in first, and Mengqi followed closely behind. Behind the door was a long corridor. Many pearls were inlaid on the walls on both sides. The soft light of the pearls illuminated the path ahead of the two of them, and also illuminated the entire corridor. Under Mengqi's feet, there was a flat road paved with whole pieces of bluestone cut neatly into stone slabs. On both sides of the walls, in addition to the pearls, there seemed to be many lines of various colors drawn. The lines were messy, and it was impossible to tell what they were. Mengqi raised her head and looked at the ceiling of the corridor, which was also inlaid with countless pearls. This is a star map, Ji Wujiang said as he walked in front. Yes. Mengqi nodded. The entire corridor was inlaid with countless pearls to imitate the starry sky and form a vast star map. What about these lines? She asked again. They're randomly drawn. Ji Wujiang glanced at them and said angrily. The corridor was not long. The two of them walked for a short while, and were almost at the exit. Some light from the sky shone in from the front, making the pearls at the exit of the corridor look a little dim. Seeing that they were only a few steps away from the exit, Ji Wujiang stopped and asked Mengqi, "What do you think will be the next level?" Mengqi thought for a moment and said, "The first level is attentiveness, detoxification, and cooperation. The second level is supposed to be the medical cultivator's reaction, treatment, and teamwork. The third level," she looked ahead and said, "it should also require us to cooperate well. And then," Mengqi thought for a moment and said, "medical cultivators have a benevolent heart and benevolent skills. After the skills are in the heart, we were tested on skills. Next, we should be tested on both our heart and skills." Ji Wujiang raised his eyebrows and said, "Let's go out." He even felt that Mengqi, a young girl who could become a 4th-rank medical cultivator, when she was only in the foundation building realm, was quite reasonable. Okay. Mengqi also stepped forward again, and walked out of the corridor. As soon as she stepped out of the corridor, the sudden bright sunlight made her subconsciously close her eyes. Before she could open her eyes, a refreshing fragrance of flowers hit her in the face. Mengqi subconsciously held her breath and slowly opened her eyes. She was suddenly stunned. In front of her was a scenery that was somewhat strange yet somewhat familiar. In the distance, there were green mountains, and at the foot of the mountains was a large grassland with hundreds of flowers in full bloom. A clear river happily passed through the grassland. From time to time, she could see fish jumping out of the river and quickly falling back into the river. Mengqi stood in place for a moment, and suddenly reacted. "Ji Wujiang?" She looked around but found that the black-robed young man wasn't by her side. "Ji Wujiang." Mengqi called out again. There were only the brisk chirping of birds, and the sound of the rushing river. Other than that, there was nothing else. "Ji Wujiang." Mengqi called out again. She and Ji Wujiang walked out of the corridor side by side, only half a step away from each other. In a flash. No matter how fast Ji Wujiang's movements were, he shouldn't have disappeared in an instant. Unless, Meng Qi quickly took 2 steps forward and was about to call out to Ji Wujiong again. Suddenly, her shoulder was gently patted from behind. Meng Qi instantly breathed a sigh of relief. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. As she turned around, she said, "I was still wondering where you went. This place looks so peaceful. Could it be what you said, the more peaceful the place looks?" Her voice suddenly stopped abruptly. The moment Meng Qi turned around, her eyes fell into a pair of clear eyes. The white-robed man, Yin Qingyan, was standing behind her and looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. Chapter 88. The Qingyan's Henjan. Meng Qi was about to call him senior, when she suddenly remembered that he didn't like it when she called him that. So she quickly changed her way of addressing him. She didn't expect to see Yin Qingyan again so soon. She raised her head slightly and stared at the white-robed man in front of her without blinking. Yin Qingyan looked a little different from the last time he taught her about arrays. A small black sandalwood hat tied up his hair, and his features were still as picturesque as before. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes, and even his expression looked much gentler. This didn't look like the Yin Qingyan that Meng Qi saw that day. He looked more like the Yin Qingyan that she respected as the best and most gentle person in the 3 realms when she was learning from him in her previous life. Meng Qi's head was dizzy. In that instant, he seemed to have forgotten where he was. She looked up at Yin Qingyan in a daze, until he reached out and waved his hand in front of her. He smiled and said in a deep voice, "Have you seen enough?" Meng Qi's face heated up, and she looked away reluctantly. "Qingyan's Henjun, are you okay?" She remembered that when he spoke before, he always sounded a little weak. "Yes." Yin Qingyan nodded. "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine now." "That's good." Meng Qi looked down and watched as Yin Qingyan walked forward. She hurriedly caught up with him and walked behind him step by step. Yin Qingyan had always liked white robes, and most white robes were very simple and didn't have any extra decorations. Meng Qi looked at the hem of such a neat and simple white robe, and watched as it swayed slowly with his footsteps. She felt very happy in her heart. Meng Qi followed behind Yin Qingyan just like that, and she even forgot to ask why he suddenly appeared here, not to mention asking him where he was taking her. They followed the river for a short while, crossed a bamboo bridge, and turned a corner. After walking for a while along a mountain that wasn't too high, Yin Qingyan stopped and stepped aside. Meng Qi glanced at him and then looked ahead. There was a valley there. At the entrance, apricot flowers bloomed all over the ground. She took a deep breath, rubbed her eyes in disbelief, and subconsciously walked towards the valley. The valley was not particularly wide, and there were 4 bamboo houses inside. The bamboo house was transparent, and the windows and doors were open. Standing outside, one could see the situation inside the house. In front of the bamboo house, along the foot of the mountain, there was a medicinal field. It was divided into many pieces, and there were 20 to 30 kinds of spirit herbs and spirit flowers planted in it. Some spiritual flowers were in full bloom. The flowers were small, exquisite, and adorable. Meng Qi didn't need to walk over. He could tell the names of those spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers with his eyes closed. She had personally opened up the medicinal field, and most of the plants had been transplanted here by her. She had taken great care of them, and they had managed to survive in the valley, where spiritual energy was abundant. That was right. Meng Qi didn't need to check. She could already feel the rich and abundant spiritual energy here, as if it was about to materialize. Cultivating in the valley was twice the result with half the effort. Even someone like her, who was not very talented in cultivation, could cultivate much faster than usual. Meng Qi murmured, and her eyes swept across the grass and trees that she was very familiar with. There were 4 bamboo houses, and one of them was specially prepared for her to refine pills. Not only that, there was a spirit spring at the back of the mountain. The spring water was mixed with some spiritual energy, and it was perfect for refining pills. Meng Qi had lived here on and off for almost 3 years. It was here that she learned the fire array, the star array, and the 4 extremes array. It was also here that she and Yin Qingyan had worked out how to embed the incantation into the elixir, so that the elixir's effect would improve by leaps and bounds. Meng Qi closed her eyes. When she opened them again, The scene in front of her was still the same. Her eyes turned red, and she blinked desperately for a long time to prevent herself from losing her composure in front of Yun Qingyan. Qingyan's Henjun. Meng Qi turned to look at Yun Qingyan, who was standing tall, and her lips trembled. We, TSXSW. La, you don't like it here? Yun Qingyan smiled and walked forward first. He walked casually into the leftmost bamboo house, which was also where he used to live. Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan's voice was gentle. You've been working hard these days. Go and rest. With that, he entered the house and closed the door with a sweep of his long sleeves. Yes. Meng Qi responded in a low voice. She glanced at the tightly shut door reluctantly before obediently turning around and walking towards the bamboo house at the side. All the furniture in the room was made of bamboo. Although it was simple, Meng Qi felt very warm in her eyes. She sat on the bamboo bed in a daze. Even the bedding on the bed was the same as before. Meng Qi looked around. The furnishings in the room had not changed. She had an illusion that she was in a dream. When she woke up, she realized that she was not dead and that Yun Qingyan would return in 3 months as promised. They were still living here, carefree, like immortals. Meng Qi lowered her head slightly and reached out to touch the blanket on the bed. The soft and neat blanket felt so real to the touch. She felt like she had forgotten something. But her mind was full of Yun Qingyan, who was wearing a white robe and smiling. I've been very tired these days, Meng Qi murmured. Let's rest for a while first. She took off her shoes and lay on the bed. She pulled the blanket over her body and slowly closed her eyes. Meng Qi soon fell into a deep sleep. In her storage bag in the beast house, the little white tiger's eyes were wide open. The light of the Big Dipper stars flashed across his blue eyes. He reached out a small paw and pressed it on the ground. Meng Qi. The little white tiger suddenly called out in a low voice. His voice was as pleasant as the sound of a flute. It did not sound like the voice of a cute and innocent little white tiger at all. Meng Qi, he called out again. The girl in the green robe was still asleep on the bed. Humph. The little white tiger snorted, and a light flashed in his eyes again. He reached out his paw, and a white light flashed on the tip of his paw. In the blink of an eye, Yun Qingyan appeared in the Heaven and Earth Book House. Oh. In the Heaven and Earth Book House, the owner of the house, the elder, was leaning lazily on a pile of soft cushions with a bamboo slip in his hand. When he heard the commotion, he looked up at Yun Qingyan and chuckled. Little friend Meng didn't come today. You came first. Tell me, what's the matter? As the elder spoke, he stood up and stretched his body. To be frank, your granduncle is already very old. My old bones can't withstand the torment like last time. Do you think I'm like you young people who can travel thousands of miles in a minute? I almost fell apart. Are you unhappy that she came to chat with you? Yun Qingyan snorted and walked up. He didn't seem to move, but he reached the 12th floor of the Heaven and Earth Book House in one step. This was already very high, and there were very few books on the 12th floor. The bookshelves were no different from the other floors. They were tall and broad, but the bamboo slips on them were sparse. Sometimes they were even empty. In the blink of an eye, Yun Qingyan had walked past several rows of bookshelves. The elder also caught up and stood beside him. He glanced at him and asked, "What are you looking for?" Illusion array, Yun Qingyan said casually and threw 2 bamboo slips back on the bookshelves. The elder raised his eyebrows in surprise. There are arrays in this world that you don't know about? Yun Qingyan continued walking forward and said, I don't know about many arrays that were lost in the Trichiliocosm tens of thousands of years ago. What's wrong? The old man smiled. Is that little girl trapped inside? Yun Qingyan didn't say anything. The elder persevered and continued to ask, You can't do anything? Can't you wake her up? Yun Qingyan was speechless. This is interesting. The elder smiled and shook his head as he walked forward. What did the little girl encounter? It's rare for you to be so anxious. She met me in the illusion array, or rather, a man who looks exactly like me. Yun Qingyan said, There's a big difference, but she looked as if she had lost her soul. I don't know why I couldn't tell. As he spoke, he threw another bamboo slip back. The old man glanced back at him and slowly said, Although I don't know what kind of illusory array it is, there are many ways to break it. The simplest way to break an illusory array is for the person who enters it to be able to sense that something is wrong, and the illusion will break by itself. Yes. Yin Qingyan nodded. The elder was an elder of his clan. Everyone's talent was limited, so the power of the array might be different in the end. However, he was in charge of the library of the Heavenly Demon White Tiger clan on the Heaven and Earth Tree. His understanding of arrays was no less than Yin Qingyan's. So little friend Meng is trapped in an illusion, and doesn't want to wake up? The elder said with a chuckle. Yes. Yin Qingyan threw another bamboo slip back. That person didn't say or do anything, but Meng Qi was so obedient. Do you care? The elder suddenly turned around and looked at Yin Qingyan with a smile. His eyes flashed. She's still in the array of the competition in the apricot forest. I don't know when she'll come out. Yin Qingyan didn't answer the question directly. Instead he said, she can't be trapped in there forever. He paused and said, the apricot forest was their senior medical cultivator tens of thousands of years ago. When Yin Qingyan mentioned the word senior, he gritted his teeth and continued, the Dharma array that was passed down and supported the entire apricot forest is indeed very powerful. It's magnificent. Even if it was tens of thousands of years ago, the person who could set up such a huge Dharma array must have been a supreme powerhouse at that time. The elder narrowed his eyes and thought seriously for a moment. Medical cultivator. The person who set up the array might not have been a medical cultivator. However, the apricot forest resonates with the great Tao of medical cultivation. Its power hasn't decreased even after tens of thousands of years. That's very powerful. The elder nodded slowly. A thought suddenly occurred to him. If it resonates with the great Tao of medical cultivation, and is used by medical cultivators as an array for the competition, doesn't that mean it's used to test medical cultivators? That's right, Yin Qingyan said. Then, the elder narrowed his eyes. As far as I know, medical cultivators from tens of thousands of years ago placed great emphasis on their skills. I'm afraid this illusory array is used to test young friend Meng's sincerity in the Tao of medical cultivation. The person Meng Qi saw there was me, Yin Qingyan repeated. Oh. The elder glanced at him. Perhaps you're the stumbling block in young friend Meng's pursuit of the great Tao of medical cultivation. Yin Qingyan was speechless. You'd better not interfere. The elder added. Now that you mention it, I think of an illusory array. However, it's true that it was lost tens of thousands of years ago. It's said that the illusory array is extremely difficult to break, because the people who enter the array will see the real things that will happen in the future. It's also the thing that's buried deep in her heart, the thing that she looks forward to the most. If it's an illusory array, young friend Meng can only rely on himself to find a way to break it. Moreover, since young friend Meng is a medical cultivator, the test of her holy land is connected to the great Tao of medical cultivation. What are you worried about? The elder said. If she's really very talented and can pass the test of her holy land's great Tao, she'll benefit greatly in the future. Don't ruin her plans. Yin Qingyan was speechless. Go. The elder waved his hand. As a demon lord, you're becoming more and more outrageous. You're so wishy-washy. Young friend Meng should be more decisive. Demon Lord. Yin Qingyan raised his eyebrows. A black iron token suddenly appeared in his hand. He played with it casually. The Demon Lord token is about to reappear. Many ambitious heaven demons in the demon realm are looking forward to the change of master of the demon realm. The elder was speechless. The Sea of Fallen Stars won't be able to hold on for much longer, Yin Qingyan added. After saying that, without waiting for the elder to ask again, his figure flashed and disappeared from the Heaven and Earth book house. However, the elder did not leave immediately. He stood behind the railing on the 12th floor and looked down at the Heaven and Earth book house. After a while, his figure gradually disappeared, but his muttering seemed to be left in the wind. This old man has one foot in the grave. Why should I worry about such things? I'd better go play chess with that old man. In the apricot forest, Ji Wujiong sat cross-legged on the ground inside the barrier. Below him was a black cliff. The cliff was dangerous, and the surrounding cliffs were ferocious. It was surrounded by a strange-looking black sea. Although it was called a sea, There was no water in it at all. The dense devil chi was as thick as water and filled the entire sea. The devil chi surged wildly, and from time to time, shrill screams that sounded like malicious ghosts were heard. The smell of blood permeated the air. The 3 scars on the right side of Ji Wujiang's face were even clearer and more terrifying here. He sat cross-legged and did not move at all. Even his eyes were tightly shut, as if he was not affected by the environment here at all. Where was Mengqi? This was the only problem that Ji Wujiang was worried about. Had she also encountered the same situation? The fallen star sea of the Mo world was even more dangerous and terrifying than the fallen star sea of the 3,000 worlds. Could Xia Zhuji get out safely? Ji Wujiang suddenly opened his eyes. A light flashed through his eyes. He stood up and slowly pulled out his black narrow blade. Mengqi had never seen where Ji Wujiang pulled out the narrow blade from before. If she was here now, she would see that the other's hand was tightly clasped in front of his chest. The black narrow blade was pulled out bit by bit from where his heart was. The amethyst 8 trigrams plate also appeared beside him in an instant. Bloody light surged in Ji Wujiang's eyes. He held the black narrow blade and walked step by step towards the edge of the cliff. You have a good memory. On Mengqi's side, it was a scene of warmth. Sunlight spilled into the bamboo house through the window. This was the bamboo house that Mengqi used to make elixirs. Half of it was the elixir room, and the other half was a simple study with a bamboo table. At this moment, she was sitting in front of the bamboo table with a piece of rice paper in front of her. Yin Qingyan was sitting opposite her. After he said that sentence, he looked at the small line of words that Mengqi had written on the rice paper. What is this? The elixir recipe of the Tsangming powder, Mengqi said. Oh, Yin Qingyan asked with interest. Just now, you said that you can seal the spell into the elixir to greatly increase its efficacy. Yes. Mengqi nodded and looked at him. Unknowingly, she had been living here for almost a month. Everything seemed to have returned to the past. She got up early every day and cultivated. Whether it was Mengqi or Yin Qingyan, they could actually go without eating for a long time. However, she still cooked every day. Although the style was simple, they were all Yin Qingyan's favorite dishes. In the afternoon, the 2 of them would come to this elixir room together. Sometimes Yin Qingyan would teach Mengqi the array, or the 2 of them would discuss the method of making elixirs. That day Mengqi learned a new fire array. At that time was very tight, so she memorized it. She also took it out and asked Yin Qingyan for advice again. Yin Qingyan naturally told her everything she knew as usual. In the blink of an eye, a month passed just like that. Mengqi also took care of the medicinal field every day. The spiritual flowers that were blooming when she came had already withered, and some had even borne fruit. She still felt that time passed too quickly, just like the few years she spent with Yin Qingyan in her previous life. It always seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, the 2 of them were sitting face to face. Mengqi wrote the last stroke and said, Qingyan's Henjun, the Tsangming elixir's medicinal properties are overbearing. After taking it, one spiritual sea will be damaged, and one won't be able to use spiritual aura for 3 days. I don't know the Tsangming art, but I can use the North Nether art or something that can treat injuries to one spiritual sea, such as... Mengqi tilted his head slightly and said seriously, seal a magic art like the 9 Yang arts into the Tsangming elixir. This idea is quite interesting. Yin Qingyan smiled slightly. Mengqi smiled somewhat embarrassedly. Yin Qingyan had always been very good. No matter how naive her idea was, he never laughed at her. Instead, he would discuss it with her in high spirits. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Yin Qingyan, who seemed to like smiling more than before after they reunited. Mengqi's cheeks flushed slightly, and he said in a low voice, sealing a magic art into an elixir was originally just a whimsical idea of mine. No one stipulated that a magic art with the same effect must be sealed into an elixir of the same effect, so... Don't move, Yin Qingyan suddenly said. Mengqi was startled, and he subconsciously raised his head to look at the other party. Yin Qingyan stretched out his slender fingers towards Mengqi, but just as they were about to touch her forehead, he suddenly stopped. He seemed to sigh softly. There's ink on your forehead. Oh. Mengqi nodded repeatedly, and reached out to quickly wipe her forehead in embarrassment. A little to the left. Yin Qingyan motioned her to the left. Here. Meng Qi followed his instructions and wiped her forehead to the left. Yin Qingyan seemed to sigh softly again, and his fingers moved forward. His fingertips were warm, and his nails were neatly trimmed. His slightly warm fingertips gently brushed Meng Qi's left forehead. Here. He withdrew his fingers as soon as he touched her, without any intention of teasing her. Meng Qi's face flushed red, and she hurriedly reached out to wipe the ink stain on her forehead. She was secretly angry in her heart. How could she be so careless? She actually embarrassed herself in front of Yin Qingyan again. She sat upright in front of the bamboo table with her hands hanging down, not knowing what to say for a long time. However, the spot on her forehead that his fingertips had just touched seemed to have a small flame left there, and it was still a little hot. The bamboo house was extremely quiet for a moment. Neither Meng Qi nor Yin Qingyan spoke first. The fragrance of medicine wafted in spirals, and only the faint sound of medicinal herbs cracking could be heard from time to time in the elixir furnace behind her. Qing Qingyan's Hinjun. After a long silence, Meng Qi murmured again. Just now Meng Qi. Yin Qingyan suddenly asked, will you be unhappy because of this? Meng Qi didn't understand. She subconsciously raised her head and looked at the other party in confusion. The white-robed young man seemed to sigh softly again. Then he raised his hand and reached out to Meng Qi's forehead again. His slightly warm fingertips, which were far warmer than the sunlight shining into the room, gently fell on Meng Qi's forehead. Will you not like it? Yin Qingyan asked. Meng Qi seemed to be frozen in place. Her eyes suddenly widened, and she stared at Yin Qingyan in a daze. The slightly warm fingertips on her forehead. There was a cool, faint woody fragrance on the other party's body. As long as she looked up, she could see Yin Qingyan's wide sleeves hanging in front of her eyes. In a place where Meng Qi could smell the other party's breath, the other party's slender and perfect hand was in a place where she could reach out and touch it. Meng Qi murmured. Her heart was in a mess. Was she unhappy? Of course not. To her, Yin Qingyan was like a god, an unreachable mountain that she could only look up to. As long as she could follow in the other party's footsteps and not be despised by the other party, she would be satisfied. If there was occasionally a place where she could be of service, then Meng Qi would definitely be very happy. So how could she be unhappy? To be able to be with each other day and night like this, to be able to return to the past that she thought she would never be able to go back to, Meng Qi was simply overjoyed. Why are you crying? Yin Qingyan murmured. His fingers slid down Meng Qi's forehead and finally gently brushed against her eyelashes. The girl's long and thick eyelashes were wet with tears. Even her eyes, which had always been bright and clear, were also filled with sparkling tears. Yin Qingyan wiped away Meng Qi's tears with his fingers. Tell me, why are you crying? Because. Meng Qi looked at him, tears rolling down her cheeks. She couldn't even remember how long it had been since she last shed tears. Meng Qi suddenly reached out and wiped away her tears. Her eyes were still red, but she still looked at the other party and said slowly, word by word, because I'm about to wake up from my sweet dream, so I'm crying. Yin Qingyan's expression suddenly changed. Meng Qi looked up at the surroundings. Kacha-kacha sounds, no one knew where it came from. The entire bamboo house began to turn into huge pieces. Those pieces didn't fall, but were annihilated in the air just like that. The bamboo house, the bamboo table, the pill furnace, the sunlight, and then Yin Qingyan, who was sitting opposite Meng Qi. His expression still looked a little strange, as if he was trying hard to smile, but his smile was distorted. Meng Qi stood up. She had already wiped away the tears on her face. Although I didn't gain the favor of that senior, I had the opportunity to become his disciple. But that senior treated me like a master and a father. He is the person I respect the most in this world. Meng Qi paused after every word, and her voice was unusually cold. He would never do such a thing. Kacha-kacha continued to sound, and even the Yin Qingyan in front of her turned into countless pieces. Meng Qi looked at this scene indifferently. Her eyes were clearly still slightly red, but there was no sadness or joy in her eyes. In the storage bag, little white tiger's eyes finally lit up. He was very happy that Mengqi had seen through the flower array faster than he expected. But when he heard the other party's words, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She still happily called him senior behind his back, and even said, master and father. Did he look so old compared to Ji Wujiang and the others? He wasn't even her peer. He was her senior, the master she wholeheartedly wanted to become. TSK, she didn't know how a certain person treated her when they first met. If she found out in the future. Little white tiger turned over and placed its paws under its chin. It changed its posture and continued to rest with its eyes closed. Mengqi. Before the illusion array in front of her completely dissipated, Mengqi suddenly heard a somewhat hurried call. Ji Wujiang. She hurriedly turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. Not far behind her, on a steep cliff, Ji Wujiang leaned against a huge rock on the cliff and half sat there. He looked like he was injured. Besides the 3 scars on the right side of his face, there were also many more wounds on the left side of his face. His black robe was torn in several places, and his hair looked a little messy. What happened to you? Mengqi hurriedly walked towards him. Don't. Ji Wujiang panted heavily and stopped her. Don't come over. Just as he finished speaking, a surge of vast spirit qi suddenly descended and enveloped Mengqi. The spirit qi was too abundant, a little like the medicinal aura when her medical skills advanced to 4th grade. It actually looked like a substance. Ji Wujiang couldn't even see Mengqi's figure clearly after it enveloped her like this. No way. He looked at her and muttered to himself. I'm killing so many people here. Could it be that she... Before Ji Wujiang could finish his thoughts, the spirit qi had already started to move rapidly. Mengqi, who was inside it, only felt unbearable pain, as if her entire body was being pricked by countless small needles and knives. A large amount of spirit qi rushed into her spirit sea, which had been quiet for a long time. Although the spirit qi was vast and boundless, it was not overbearing at all. After it rushed into her spirit sea, it quickly made the entire spirit sea much bigger than before. Could it be? Mengqi struggled to stand firm, but she heard a gentle voice in her mind. Little friend, relax. She was startled. Although she didn't know who the unfamiliar voice was, there was a voice in her heart telling her that this voice wouldn't lie to her. Mengqi obediently relaxed her body slowly. As her spirit sea grew bigger, more and more spirit qi gathered in it. This time, even Mengqi felt it herself. In her spirit sea, the spirit qi gradually gathered together and formed a huge white ball of light. There was more and more spirit qi in the ball of light, but the ball of light was getting smaller and smaller. Finally, the light suddenly shone brightly, and the ball of light finally turned into a small silver white ball, suspended in the air above the spirit sea. Wisps of spirit qi flowed out of the small silver white ball, and slowly poured into the spirit sea below. The originally empty spirit sea, which was more than 10 times bigger than before, began to gradually fill with spirit qi. The spirit qi surrounding Mengqi had also been completely absorbed by her. She also came back to her senses, and her feet stepped on the ground. Mengqi was startled for a moment, and she once again probed into her spirit sea in disbelief, looking at the vast spirit sea and the silver white ball that seemed to be endlessly growing. She couldn't help but slowly exhale. Had she succeeded in forming her gold core? Mengqi raised her eyes and looked at Ji Wujiang in front of her with a face full of disbelief. You're finally not a burden anymore. Ji Wujiang snorted softly. Congratulations, Mengqi. Chapter 89. Even though Ji Wujiang said this, there was no sarcasm in his tone. His injuries were not light. Even if he forced himself to say a few words, it would affect his injuries. He couldn't help but raise his hand and lightly press on his shoulder. How are you? Mengqi had not completely recovered yet. She had actually recovered from her core formation. She felt the Ling energy in her body surging. Her Ling Sea had suddenly become more than 10 times larger than before. Now it could probably really be called a sea. Other than that, that little silver ball was continuously spinning in the air above her Ling Sea. Threads of Ling energy flowed out of the little ball, and slowly flowed into the wide Ling Sea. In reality, Jindan Xiuzhe did not truly have endless Ling energy, but once the Niden was formed, as long as it was not suddenly consumed too quickly, Ling energy would slowly recover. Therefore, there was a saying in the 3,000 worlds. The general idea was that only successful core formation could be considered to have truly stepped onto the great path of Xiuzhi. Zhuji and Lianqi were just slightly stronger than normal people, had a bit more Ling energy, and could use some spells. Only after reaching Jindan's stage would the traces of time on Xiuzhi slow down and fade. Xiuzhi were originally going against the heavens. After Jindan, they could be considered to have a small accomplishment. Then, every time a Xiuzhi broke through a major realm, they would face a heavenly tribulation. When Mengqi said that to Ji Wujiang, the Ling energy in her body that was 10 times more than before was circulating. She instinctively raised her hand and felt her fingertips swell slightly, as though Ling energy would burst out of her fingers in the next moment. I guess? Ji Wujiang's expression twisted with each word. He still could not control himself. He gritted his teeth and continued to say to Mengqi, "It should be because you passed this test, so this is the reward." He took a deep breath and asked again, "What did you just encounter?" Mengqi stilled. She finally looked around. On the black cliff, the place where Ji Wujiang sat leaning against a large rock should be the only safe place here. As for herself, Mengqi looked down at her feet. She was also standing on black rocks. She was also at the top of a cliff. Around them was an even more vast and boundless black sea. Above the sea, the chilly wind howled angrily. Huge black waves rolled up crazily, slamming heavily against the cliff they were on. That aura seemed to want to smash the entire cliff. The huge wave quickly dissipated in the air, and did not fall back into the sea. Mengqi focused his gaze and realized that the sea was not black water, but black devil qi that was so dense that it seemed to have materialized. Hiss! She couldn't help but take a deep breath. Mengqi was originally standing very close to the cliff. Looking down from above, he only felt dizzy. She instinctively took a few steps back and raised her eyebrows to look at Ji Wujiang. There was a crack between the cliffs they were on. The crack was about 60 to 70 feet wide, and there were still huge waves of devil qi churning wildly below it. "Are you hurt?" Mengqi asked. "Oh." Ji Wujiang changed his position to make himself more comfortable. "It's just a minor injury." Mengqi looked at his right hand, which was at his side. Ji Wujiang's fingers were actually very good-looking. They were slender and strong, but they were a little sickly pale. At this time, there were still traces of dried brown blood on his pale fingers. He leaned against the huge rock and talked to Mengqi for a while, but he never stood up. This was definitely not a minor injury. Even though Ji Wujiang was arrogant and unbridled, if it was really a minor injury, there was no way he would lie on the ground and talk to her like this. Mengqi took 2 steps forward. She looked down at the sea of devil qi below the cliff, where the wind was howling and the huge waves were crashing into the sky. Then she looked up at Ji Wujiang. "I guess the third test is an illusion formation," Mengqi said seriously. "Huh." Ji Wujiang was stunned. Mengqi looked around again. "After I left that passage, I couldn't find you again. It was not until 30 minutes ago when I saw through the illusion formation that I suddenly saw you again." She paused and said, "I thought a month had passed." 9 days. Ji Wujiang took a deep breath and said, "It's 9 days here." "Oh." Mengqi nodded and continued to look around. "I think this illusion formation should be different for each person. The one I met was the most." At this point she suddenly shut her mouth. This time, it was not only Ji Wujiang who looked at her curiously. Even the little white tiger in the beast house opened its eyes and glanced forward lazily. It stretched out its paws and scratched the bamboo bed in boredom. Was this what Mengqi looked forward to the most? What she desired the most? Was it that place? Or was it that person? The little white tiger narrowed its eyes slightly, but its 2 furry little ears suddenly stood up, as if it was afraid of missing a word from Mengqi. Mengqi paused and met Ji Wujiang's curious gaze. She continued, "The most unforgettable place. I wanted to return there and see that person again. So this time I saw him." "Oh," Ji Wujiang responded and asked, "The person who taught you the array?" "Yes." Mengqi nodded. Ji Wujiang looked at Mengqi and snorted. "Then you discovered that it was just an illusion formation, and saw through the other party?" "Yes." Mengqi nodded again. She vaguely felt that something was wrong. If it was just to see through the illusion formation, wasn't the test a little too simple? After all, this was the barrier of the holy land of medical cultivators. The second test was more difficult than the first, but the third test was a little like child's play. Also, why was she able to enter Ji Wujiang's barrier? This sea of demonic aura should be Ji Wujiang's illusion formation. Meng Qi observed her surroundings carefully. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and they were very close to them, as if they would fall at any time. In the Black Sea, demonic aura surged wildly and roared, desperately crashing toward the two cliffs, as if it would smash the cliffs at any time and pull them into the bottomless sea of demonic aura. Meng Qi took another step forward. She was now standing on the edge of the cliff on her side. If she took another step forward, she would be in the abyss crack. "Did you bring medicine?" Meng Qi asked. "I ate it all," Ji Wujiang replied lazily. "Oh." Meng Qi took out a small porcelain bottle from her storage bag. "This is the 7 treasure pill. It's quite effective for internal injuries." She then took out a small jade box. "This is the black frost powder. It's used to treat external injuries." As Meng Qi spoke, she raised her hand and threw the 2 things toward Ji Wujiang. "Can you do it yourself?" "Don't." Ji Wujiang suddenly sat up, but it was too late to stop her. In the Black Sea, a stream of demonic aura suddenly rose into the sky and swept up from the crack, instantly sweeping away the porcelain bottle and jade box that Meng Qi threw out. The sea of demonic aura became even more frenzied, and there seemed to be wild laughter coming from it. Meng Qi took a deep breath. She felt a little strange just now. It seemed that it was safe except on this cliff. As long as you left the cliff, the demonic aura would attack you without restraint. "See?" Ji Wujiang sat back down again. "This place is very strange." Meng Qi softly said, "Yes." Anyway, she couldn't think of a better way for the time being, so she simply sat down cross-legged. Just now, she accidentally formed her gold core all because of the large amount of spiritual aura that crazily poured into her body. After all, that spiritual aura wasn't obtained by Meng Qi through solid cultivation. For her now, it was definitely not as useful as the spiritual aura that she cultivated bit by bit. However, Meng Qi was also very familiar with this. In her previous life, she also relied on the star formation taught by Yin Qingyan to barely break through and successfully form her gold core. The star formation crazily plundered spiritual aura from spirit stones and forcibly poured it into her body. After Yin Qingyan taught her the method to resolve it, Meng Qi sat down cross-legged, made a hand seal with each hand, and closed her eyes. "Ji Wujiang." He glanced at Meng Qi. He wasn't surprised that she would do such a thing. This girl had always been calm, and her calmness was often beyond his expectations. The reason why he didn't remind Meng Qi not to step out of the cliff before was that he guessed that she would never act rashly before figuring out the situation. At this time, seeing Meng Qi sit down cross-legged, Ji Wujiang also closed his eyes tiredly. He had been fighting in this sea of demonic aura for 9 days and 9 nights. He didn't know where the end was, nor did he know how much he had to kill before he could get out of here. However, the moment Ji Wujiang saw this place, he already knew. If he wanted to leave here, there was only one way. Kill. 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 The sea of demonic aura would slowly condense into demonic creatures. The demonic creatures that Ji Wujiang killed were these formed demonic creatures. Every time he killed one, the demonic aura in the sea of demonic aura would decrease a little, and the black clouds in the sky would increase a little. Just like this, he exhausted his spiritual aura, and lay on the only safe cliff, waiting for his spiritual aura to recover. Once he recovered, he would continue to fight. Ji Wujiang's already damaged Ling Si did not worsen in these 9 days and 9 nights of frenzied killing. Instead, every time he killed a demonic creature, a thread of Mo energy would enter his body and return to his Ling Si. On the largest crack in his Ling Si, the Mo energy wove into a net and slowly covered the crack. Xiuzhe did not have to rest. But 9 days and 9 nights of continuous fighting still caused Ji Wujiang to feel deep fatigue. Previously, he hadn't dared to close his eyes at all. Meng Qi suddenly came down from the sky, and slowly walked over through the black void. Ji Wujiang had mocked her a little, but he felt a warmth rise in his heart. He closed his eyes. He had a feeling that Meng-Chi was not far away. Without realizing it, he fell into a deep sleep like that. He didn't know how much time had passed. The black clouds in the sky prevented him from seeing the passage of time. Meng-Chi finally opened her eyes. Her eyes had been clear to begin with. At this time, they seemed to have a layer of warm light. Phew! Meng-Chi exhaled and stood up to move her body. She had finally tempered all the Ling energy and could use it for her own use. Her mind moved. Her finger flicked, and a dot of white light appeared at her fingertip. The white light was bright, much stronger than the fluorescent dot of light from before. Meng-Chi had not only succeeded in forming her core here, her medical skills had also advanced to 4th grade. Right now, even if she returned to the 3,000 worlds, she could be considered a Xiuzha who had the power to protect herself and could walk in the 4 Jia. Jiwujiong. Meng-Chi put down her hand and looked at Jiwujiong. The black-robed man moaned softly, but did not wake up. Jiwujiong. Meng-Chi called the other again. She raised her eyes to look at the sky. The black clouds seemed to be pressing down even lower, as though the black clouds were pressing down on the city. Jiwujiong still did not wake up. This time, he did not even move his body. Meng-Chi looked around and picked up a small stone from the cliff. She flicked her finger, and the small stone rushed to Jiwujiong's side. Just as the stone rushed out of the cliff, another wave of Mo energy flew up with a roar and swept it away. The sea of Mo energy instantly surged wildly again, as though mocking Meng-Chi. Jiwujiong. Meng-Chi could only raise her voice and call out again. The black-robed man was still lying quietly on the ground and did not respond to her. Was his injury too serious? Meng-Chi frowned. With Jiwujiong's cultivation and vigilance, even if he had been poisoned or had fainted from exhaustion, he would have been able to wake up instantly. She had thought that he also knew medicine. Whether he was a medical cultivator or not, he would at least know some simple healing methods. Meng-Chi hesitated for a moment. She suddenly bent down and picked up a dozen small stones from the cliff. She waved her hand, and the dozen small stones flew in all directions. Sure enough, more than a dozen waves of Mo energy rushed out of the sea of Mo energy, and all the small stones were swept away in an instant. In the sea of Mo energy, strong winds howled. The proud howls of the Mo energy could probably even wake a deaf person up. However, Jiwujiong, who was opposite the cliff, was still lying quietly on the ground without any movement. What should she do now? Meng-Chi paced back and forth along the cliff. She looked up at the sky. Those black clouds seemed to be pressing down even lower. She did not know when they would really press down. Then Jiwujiong, little friend. At this moment, a gentle voice suddenly sounded in Meng-Chi's ears. She was not unfamiliar with that voice. Earlier, when spirit energy surrounded her body and she was in so much pain, it was this voice that suddenly appeared and made her relax. Senior? Meng-Chi looked up and looked around. In the beast house, little white tiger narrowed its eyes. Senior again? Who was Meng-Chi calling? He realized that Meng-Chi would call the old man in the Heaven and Earth Book House Senior. She called him Senior, and now she was calling someone Senior. Who was it? Little white tiger looked up slightly. He knew that it was impossible for him to see. It should be the divine consciousness left behind by Meng-Chi and the other almighty medical cultivators tens of thousands of years ago in this barrier. Or perhaps, it was the almighty array formation cultivator who created this barrier. Little friend. That gentle voice sounded in Meng-Chi's ears again. Previously, she was surrounded by intense pain, and her mind was blank. She only felt that the voice was very friendly and trustworthy just by listening to it. However, she could not even tell if the other party was a man or a woman. At this moment, she could clearly hear that the voice was as warm as the spring breeze, pleasant to the ear. It sounded like a woman who was not much older than her was talking to her. Senior, please instruct me. Meng-Chi knew that even if the person did not sound much older than her, the person who could stay in this barrier was at least an almighty from tens of thousands of years ago. She could not be wrong to call that person Senior. Little friend, you are very meticulous and know very well about poisons. With the help of the two of you, you passed the first test in the shortest time. I am very comforted and happy. That woman praised gently. The clear heart technique was not in the reward for the first test. I gave you a scroll and you also chose it. It is fate that you and I are together. Thank you, Senior. Meng Qi hurriedly bowed respectfully. You are good at array formations and are not constrained by the situation. You passed the second test with a method that I never thought of. That woman said with a smile. Among the medical cultivators, there is actually an array formation genius who is not inferior to array formation cultivators. You can even use arrays for medical skills. She smiled like the spring breeze. I am even more comforted. The five-spirit cauldron can finally see the light of day again. Meng Qi was stunned. Then, it dawned on her that even the five-spirit cauldron was specially given to her by this unknown senior. She bowed respectfully to the void again. Thank you, Senior. I am ashamed to accept your care and care. These things can't be buried here. They will be destroyed forever. The woman smiled and said, You deserve it. You don't have to be humble. She paused and said slowly, In the third test, you have to be clear about your nature and see your inner heart. You can pass the test in an extremely short time. Your Tao heart is clear, and you can cultivate wholeheartedly. I will help you take a step forward in your cultivation. The path of medical cultivators has never been smooth. I hope you will live up to my expectations. Yes. Meng Qi lowered her hands and lowered her eyes. This person who was lecturing her was obviously the great medical cultivator Senior, who left the Xinglin sacred ground tens of thousands of years ago. As for this little friend, the woman's tone became indifferent. He is not one of us to begin with. I could still tolerate him in the first two tests, but in the third test, his desire to kill is very deep. The illusory formation reflects one's heart. This sea of devil qi and the sea of killing are his true thoughts. But Senior, Meng Qi hurriedly said, although Ji Wujiong is arrogant and unruly, he is also. She suddenly did not know if she should continue speaking. She had known Ji Wujiong for too short a time. During this period of time, including their first meeting, his treatment of Li Che, Shui Lingfeng, and even the medical cultivators in the Xinglin sacred ground later, she could tell that he was not the kind of person who would kill the innocent. But what about before? Meng Qi did not know what kind of person Ji Wujiong was before that. Little friend. When the woman spoke to her, her voice was gentle and still like a spring breeze. You don't have to worry too much. You have passed the 3 tests, so you can leave on your own. He is not a medical cultivator, so he should not have entered this barrier. I only let him stay to get rid of a disaster for the world. Senior. Meng Qi was stunned. She looked at Ji Wujiong, who was lying on the cliff quietly, as if he would never wake up again. Was she really going to abandon him and leave alone? He suffered a backlash from the killing intent in his heart and was seriously injured, the woman said slowly. This sea of devil qi is also formed by his murderous aura. This person is arrogant and difficult to tame. It's not my fault that the devil qi separated you and prevented you from getting close to him. Little friend, the woman said, there's no need to care about such a person anymore. You should leave alone. The 3,000 worlds, thousands of mountains and rivers, the great path of medical cultivators, they are all waiting for you ahead. But, Meng Qi gently bit her lower lip and frowned slightly. She looked at Ji Wujiong, who was lying quietly on the ground. The black-robed man was unconscious and was seriously injured. The scenes that had happened in the past few days flashed through Meng Qi's mind. No matter how arrogant and unruly Ji Wujiong was, he did not abandon Meng Qi and leave when she was in danger. The soaring serpent sect leader was so terrifying, but he did not retreat and always stood in front of her. Although he was really sharp-tongued and looked down on everyone, he would always say a few sarcastic words. However, whether it was Li Che, Shui Lingfeng, Qin Xiuma, or Shui Jinwen, they all survived under his hands. Little friend. The woman seemed to see her hesitation. As a medical cultivator, you must have a benevolent heart, but in this world, there are still some people who are not worth saving. As soon as she finished speaking, a shining gate suddenly appeared on the cliff on Meng Qi's side. Meng Qi did not need to go through the gate to see the world outside the gate. It was the sacred place of medical cultivators, the apricot forest. The apricot forest was still bustling with activity. She seemed to see her good friends Si Kongxing, Su Junmo, and even Pei Mufeng. Shui Jinwen had also woken up and was standing opposite Su Junmo. Her face was full of worry, and she was saying something. Go through this gate, and your test will be over. You and I are fated. You have the 5-spirit cauldron, so I can teach you the 5-spirit technique. In the future, when you refine medicine, you will be twice the result with half the effort. Your friends, those who are really worth saving, are waiting for you there. Little friend, go. The woman's soft voice seemed to have some kind of temptation, making Meng Qi subconsciously take a step toward the gate. Little friend. The woman's voice had a faint smile again. You have to remember. Before she finished speaking, Meng Qi suddenly stopped. Her hands hanging by her sides suddenly clenched, her eyes widened, and her teeth gently bit her lower lip, as if she was hesitating about something. Changxiang Chinese Network, little friend. The woman seemed to be startled. Is there anything else? Senior. Meng Qi suddenly looked up at the dark sky. She seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking the woman, Senior, who are the people who shouldn't be saved? Who are the people who should be saved? Meng Qi didn't need an answer. She turned around and strode toward the cliff. Ji Wujiang was lying opposite her. She didn't care about the overall situation of the world. She only knew that she couldn't abandon a companion who fearlessly stood in front of her when she was in danger, even if Ji Wujiang didn't stand in front of her. But the two of them had fought side by side all the way, and in this grand competition, they were partners. She couldn't abandon her partner and leave alone. Little friend. The woman's voice became serious when she spoke to Meng Qi. Do you know that if you insist on saving him, then what you have gained here may disappear? She said. If he can't see through his own illusory formation, he can't pass this test. If you insist on facing it with him, you will also fail like him. You may fall from the Golden Core realm back to the Foundation Establishment realm, or even lower. Yes. Meng Qi responded softly. She was already standing on the edge of the cliff, looking at the sea of devil aura below the cliff, studying how to cross it. Your 4th-grade medical skills may also go against the great Tao of medical cultivation, because you saved someone who shouldn't be saved. The woman slowed down her voice and continued. Meng Qi suddenly raised her head. If I don't save him, there's no need for the great Tao of medical cultivation to expel me. My Tao heart will be greatly damaged, and I won't be able to make any progress. I won't even dare to say that I'm. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked at Ji Wujiang, who was still unconscious in front of her, and said slowly, word by word, I won't dare to say that I'm a medical cultivator. After Meng Qi finished speaking, her thin body suddenly rushed forward and rushed forward. In her previous life, she racked her brains and planned step by step, but in the end, everything was for naught. Now that she was reborn, Xu Qingxin was ready to be a salted fish concubine who watched the drama unfold. First, she didn't form cliques to consolidate favor. Second, she didn't manage the harem. And third, she didn't curry favor with the emperor. Unexpectedly, in the end, she was still the mother of the world. The emperor held her hand and doted on the harem. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.